Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing GT3 Championship as brought to you on iRacing by NXTGEN Racing in collaboration with Apex Racing Academy and Next Level Racing. Tonight, it's round 9 of the 12-round calendar, and we are here at the British circuit of Brands Hatch Grand Prix for what is expected to be a great opener and a very tight and twisty opener for the final third of our season. Remember, we've had a week's break since round number 8, so 2 weeks ago we took to the Italian circuit of Monza in what was a rather tumultuous and accident-filled race with some ups and downs, some newcomers really coming through the field and some old hands as well putting in some classic performances. And after a week break, we are now back into that final third of the season. We've got 4 more rounds to go to crown our winners in both the Pro and the AM categories, and it all starts tonight. These races are the most critical, of course, because these are the deciders as to where our drivers will finish in the championship, and drop point scores also really do start to take an effect at this point forward, and we can see that Brands Hatch is going to be one of those circuits where our drivers will be pushed to the limit immediately. Now, as we do wait to get racing, we can see the schedule there in British Summertime or UTC +1 at 8 o'clock this evening. As always, we'll begin underway with the qualifying session, 15 minutes in length, to determine who will be on pole for the purposes of our sprint race. After that, we go straight into our sprint race, the 15-minute sprint race, no pit stops or anything on those lines. It's just full flat-out racing for 15 minutes, and depending on where our drivers finish, of course, that will determine the grid order for the feature race, which follows at 5 to 9 tonight. So that will be roughly about 20 minutes or so after the sprint race. But in that gap in between, we are planning to have those post-race interviews with our class winners from the sprint race. But at 5 to 9, we'll be getting ready for the 1-hour feature race, which has that all-important strategic element which our drivers will be thinking about. And it could see some drivers make their way through the field to great success and others fall to their own detriment. In the commentary box tonight, of course, you do have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and it's great to be back trackside as we're taking a look at the drivers and making their way around the Brands Hatch circuit here. Now, in the build-up, of course, we should firstly introduce our primary sponsors for this series, without whom this would not be possible. And let's start off with Apex Racing Academy. So who are Apex Racing Academy? Well, they're not just a setup shop. They are dedicated to making you better at iRacing with services, access to drivers and features not found on other driving schools and academies. Working with them will see you connecting with pros like never before. You can learn how to prepare for a race, build setups, improve lap times and understand how to use telemetry tools such as VRS. Every week they host multiple sessions where members can join the coaches and take advantage of group coaching sessions, and in partnership with SDK Gaming, all the data provided will be automatically synced directly to your PC. There's no need to go hunting for setup, replay or ghost files. The data is right there when you turn the simulator on. Interested? Then why not sign up today at apexracingac.com. That's apexracingac.com. And of course, where you go from one of our principal partners to our other, and that is Next Level Racing. Next Level Racing, of course, founded in 2009, is the world's leading simulation brand, revolutionising simulation with its industry-leading product range, and with a clear focus on innovation and quality to meet the demanding needs of sim racers. Next Level Racing's designs and technology shall take your sim racing experience to the next level. If you want to know more about their products, be sure to head to their official website, nextlevelracing.com, today for further information. That's nextlevelracing.com. And we're grateful to have both of our primary partners on board. And of course, they've helped us run this series. And so that's why we say without these guys, it would not be possible to bring you this. And they're also contributing very heavily to the prize pool for our drivers, whether it be the winners of the championship, or alternatively, our most improved driver over the course of the season, which will be nominated by myself, as I understand it, come the end of the season. But coming away from our sponsors, we now come on to the class standings. So, after 8 rounds, We can see here, starting with the Pro Class, that Billy Fletcher is still our championship leader on 458 points, but it was a difficult time last time out at Monza. In the sprint race, Fletcher put in a solid performance, and it really worked out with 40 points on the board, finishing just behind Matt Caruana. However, in the feature race, there was to be a multi-car collision down the Seraglio curve, which saw Billy Fletcher involved right in the heart of that, and in the end, it was a case of making a huge recovery drive for Billy Fletcher, and indeed, he worked with Matt Caruana, as we did see the two Luxim 24 racing drivers working together, particularly Fletcher giving Caruana a slipstream down the straights in order to try and pursue down the eventual race winner. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be the case that Fletcher be able to take major points in the feature race, and whilst he did get the fastest lap in the sprint race, his lead has been chomped into quite considerably by the rather feisty and hungry Matt Caruana, who seems to be coming on at a very strong rate over the course of this championship. Now, second place in the Pro category with 360 points to his name, picking up pole position and the fastest lap in the feature race, plus also the win in the sprint and second place in the feature race. You can imagine Caruana right now has his sights on one thing, and that is that championship lead, and he'll be looking to cut down that gap to Fletcher even more today. And of course, he has jumped ahead of Harry Melvin, who now is in P3 in the standings on 356 points. A middling time at Monza for Melvin, with the fact he only managed to pick up a total of 29 points there. Not a strong result, and now he has to look forward to a Brands Hatch. Meanwhile, in the pursuit of P4, it's now Kenny Heremans who is taking charge of that hunt for P4, ideally the best of the rest outside the top three, having picked up no points in the sprint race at Monza, but picking up the win in the feature race with a brilliant drive from Heremans. 248 points now, putting him ahead of the likes of Austin Hereford and also Paul King. Both drivers pursuing down Heremans, and of course Hereford jumping ahead of Paul King with an absolutely brilliant pair of results at the Monza circuit. Jakob Boshoff, who I believe will not be joining us tonight, is there in P7 now on 174 points. And again, some points on the board, but a difficult night at Monza. The same for Jean-Louis Deschamps. But Bobby Thompson, another very good performance in the sprint race. But as well, Thompson, much like Fletcher, being involved in that multi-car collision down the Seraglio curve in the feature race, seeing him not pick up any points in the feature race on 165. A little bit of the momentum being taken away from Thompson. Can he get that momentum back tonight? We've got Ben Hicks there as well in the final position in our top 10 on 121 points. Not a good result for Hicks at Monza. Can he turn it round today? Meanwhile, we look outside of our top 10 and we now come down from P11 to P20, and we can see Jeremy DeBoer continuing to hold on to that P11 slot and inching ever closer to the top 10. Another pair of good points finishes at Monza. You can imagine that DeBoer really focusing on that consistency and that continuous set of results rather than those big results that other drivers are going for. And you can see, for example, Andrew Lovesey in P12, whilst he did not get any points in the sprint race and got 17 points in the feature race, by comparison with Jeremy DeBoer, who picked up an extra point overall. That's that consistency versus that one big score coming into effect. Further down the order, we can see there Stephen Norman in P15. A difficult result and day at Monza. No points on the board. 51 points to his name still. And Colin Martin able to pick up a point in the end in the sprint race. Colin Martin really having a lot of difficulty over the course of this season. And we're hoping to see his bad luck turn around over the course of tonight. All the way down in P20, we have Ben Henderson on only 3 points. And we should point out, and we will introduce the drivers very shortly, we have a multitude of additional drivers join us today from round 8 onwards in the Pro category and also in the Amateur category. So we've got even more drivers racing around on the circuit and contesting the championship, and that's fantastic to see. Meanwhile, in the amateur category, we can see here our lead driver is George Bland, back on top right now after a brilliant performance at Monza, particularly in the sprint race with 50 points, taking the win in the sprint race, and a difficult feature race where he was involved in one of the early incidents, which saw him in the end having to make a recovery drive, and he was able to recover to pick up a point. 368 points now is his lead. He's retaken the lead from the likes of Alexander Patak and Ollie Wayne, and we can see Patak and Wayne both on 341 points, and it's only on countback that Patak is ahead in P2 versus Wayne. But both drivers having good performances, but Wayne in particular having a standout performance at Monza, were the fastest lap in the sprint race, plus also those 35 points for his base result and 2 points in the feature race as well. Further down, we can see Kurt Van Hoyenacker with his win in the feature race. Those 50 points raise him into that P4 position and giving him a good grasp on it. But Nigel Stott, we do know, will be looking to come back hard versus Van Hoyenacker tonight and try and take back that P4. Only 6 points separating the two of them, and Stott carrying a very difficult time despite his 12 points being picked up in the sprint race. Looking further down the order there, we can see Matthew Addy in P8, 180 points, and continuing to have a good pair of results. A point in the sprint race and 12 points in the feature race. And Arjan Bakker having a great result in the sprint race, but not picking up any points in the feature race, and now starting to fall away from the top 9 on 124 points. A gap there, as you can see, of 45 points between himself and Jochen Seeger in P9. We come down to our P11 through to P20 group in the amateur category, and we can see Navarro de Bova has really been much like his father in the pro category. He has been putting in these consistent performances, and those points are now starting to come to fruition. With the fact now moving up into that P11 position, he's got Darren Doherty close on his heels, however, with Doherty having that brilliant performance in the feature race at Monza. But you can imagine between the two of them right now, they're going to be contesting to jump their way into the top 10 come at the end of Brands Hatch. That is, of course, if they have strong results compared to our guys right at the bottom of that top 10. Meanwhile, we've got Matthew Prout in there in P16, picking up some good points once again on an early race in his campaign in this league, having joined us midway through the league. Fastest lap in the feature race for the amateur drivers, and 20 points overall as a result in that feature race. No points in the sprint race, up to 43 points. And Jack Wyborn not picking up any points as a result of his races at Monza, down in P20 and looking to try and get some more points on the board tonight. Meanwhile, just outside the top 20, we've got Gareth Mills there, who wasn't able to pick up any points last time out at Monza, standing on 18 points. Stefan Rasmussen, who joined us as of Monza, getting 14 points on the board with a brilliant pair of results, and a bit of drama towards the end of the feature race. For those who remember, Rasmussen taking the lead towards the end of the feature race, only to lose it at Parabolica Curve, and as a result now he finds himself not able to celebrate a win, but instead just some good points on the board. How it could have been different. And Chris Keenan there down in P24 with only 2 points, not picking up any points at Monza. Now the track we're racing at tonight, of course, Brands Hatch GP, based in West Kingsdown in Kent, the Garden of England in the United Kingdom, and as we can see based on the circuit map provided to us by simracingwiki.com, consisting of only 9 corners, but 9 very tricky corners. It's a narrow circuit, it's a tight circuit, and it's one of those tracks which really requires you to have a mastery of the 1 lap pace to give yourself the qualifying position, and then you've got to try and hold on to that lead throughout the race, because it's very difficult to overtake here. It's not to say our drivers will not be able to overtake, but it is very tight. And you'll see that now as we jump to a reference lap, as brought to you by Matt Caruana. So as he comes into Paddock Hill Bend at turn 1 here, you see coming down to 3rd gear, holding it on the apex before charging down the hill here, using the momentum as he goes up the hill towards Druids at turn 2, as he makes his way into the hairpin corner, coming all the way down to 1st gear here, charging through that right-hander and now surging down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend at turn 3. A low-speed corner here, 3rd gear, some drivers may do it in 2nd, but using the run-off space there as he exits the corner to attack the run up towards Surtees corner at turn 4. Trail braking in here, very gently coming down to 3rd gear and looking to get on that power as soon as he clips the apex, and using the run-off space once again as he now comes onto the straight that runs down towards turn 5. We know this as the Pilgrim's Drop straight, and as he heads down the hill, he'll be heading up towards Hawthorne's corner. The right-hander here, it's a trail brake into 4th gear here, and as he makes his way through, he'll be sighting that exit curve, and as he sees it, he'll get on the throttle down the Derek Minter straight here in towards Westfield Bend at turn 6, and as he attacks that apex curve, they're using that run-off space again to carry as much momentum as possible. He now surges up through Dingledale into the right-hander at turn 7, known as Sheen Curve here, the most dangerous corner on the circuit because it's a blind apex up a hill, and now coming into Sterling's corner at turn 8 here, coming all the way down to 3rd gear. Some drivers will be using 2nd there depending on the car, and as they come down towards Clearways now, this is the straight nose Clearways into the final corner, going through the Clark Curve corner, another trail brake corner, 3rd gear, and you want to attack as early as possible using the full width of the circuit. And as he makes his way across, staying over to the right hand side for the fastest lap, he makes his way across that timeline to complete the lap. Thank you, Matt Caruana, for a brilliant reference lap. Now, as we come onto the rules, tonight our drivers will be required to run the iRacing high downforce setup, and each driver will have a fast repair available in the sprint race. As we go over to the feature race, our drivers will continue to have a fast repair available, but they will, of course, have 75% fuel in their fuel tanks, and they'll be restricted to that. So that means that over the course of the feature race, over that hour, they will have that mandatory pit stop where they are required to take on fuel, but whether they choose to change tyres or not is completely optional and up to our drivers. So those are the rules, of course, and now we look back to our live pictures as we're getting ready to go racing very shortly. Less than a minute to go, I believe, until we do get underway with the qualifying session here. In fact, 1.5 minutes by the timer at the top of your screen right here, and we can see right now in this practice session, Caruana, our reference lap provider, setting the fastest time in the practice session of 1:21.966, and there was a lot of talk down in the paddock in the build up to this as to what would the fastest lap be. And it does look as though it will be something in the region of that 121.9 or a little bit lower underneath that as we do a look around at our drivers right now. And we see Kenny Herriman's here taking to the circuit, of course, making his way right now up into Surtees corner. Herriman's buoyant, of course, with that brilliant result last time out at Monza in the feature race as he now makes his way down the run towards Hawthorne's corner here, building up all that speed as he charges down the hill. Other drivers, and we do have plenty of drivers to introduce tonight. Some of you will have seen some of these drivers in the GT3 Fun Night last week, which we broadcasted. We've got the new arrival of a number of pros, starting with Ben Faines here, the Belgian driver, who will be racing, I believe, it's my understanding, that he is racing as part of Team Racing in Netherlands, which is the team under Arjan Bakker. I believe it is. No, it may not be Bakker. We will get confirmation of that very shortly, but it will be the case that Ben Faines tonight will be looking to get a great result in as he makes his debut. We've also got Robert de Soenick here, as we can see the Dutchman making his way up the hill here into turn 2 as part of Team Racing Netherlands as he comes through the right hand here, see in the pro category and making his way down the hill right now into Graham Hill Bend. We've also got the arrival of Pimbo, we can see here making his way, the privateer, making his way through the left-hander there of what is Sterling's corner in the Audi R8. He's decided to go with the R8, whereas our drivers are Ben Faines and Robert de Soenick have both gone for the Porsche 911. But we get the switch over now to qualifying, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for our drivers to put in their best possible laps in the 15-minute session. Without further ado, we're going to see all of our drivers make a quick surge out of the pits now. And to give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, we have got, I believe, approximately 40 drivers taken to the British tarmac here. It is going to be incredibly tight at Brands Hatch, and we do love to see it. It's absolutely fantastic to see so many drivers taken to the circuit, and you can imagine it is going to be a major squeeze. Indeed, finding that clear space is going to be so critical. Now, other new drivers to introduce, of course, we've also got Tony Verschaft here, who is currently making his way out of the pits, and he's another pro driver here. You can see him in the BMW AM4. He's not the one in the front of your picture, he's the second from front, and we can see him now. We've got the camera focused on the pro driver as he makes his way through Paddock Hill Bend here, and onto his opening warm-up lap. We have also got Rick Jansen here, and I believe he's just joined us at the moment. He's currently not quite out of his pit box, but we do have Rick Jansen, a pro driver in the BMW. We'll try and catch him when we do get that moment. But in the meantime, we've also got some more drivers to introduce here. We have also got the likes of, and just checking my notes here, and give me 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, to be able to confirm to you who is joining us. We've got Jensen, and we've also got Arjan Kregel, who has not quite joined us as of yet, but should be coming out very shortly, and Kregel will be an amateur driver. So those are our newcomers introduced, I believe, but now let's focus on the qualifying times as they start to come in. And also some of our drivers pre-race walks. It's always good to hear from our drivers, of course, in the build-up, as we see that the opening qualifying lap is set by Pimbo, what is a 128.785, but I do think that is more of a warm-up rather than anything else right now, because everybody will be looking to get in their best possible lap come the end of their second tour of the circuit, not the first one. But you can see everybody now getting themselves set up, and it is the Audi driver here of Bo who is the first of our drivers to take to the circuit for a flying lap in the qualifying session, as everybody gets themselves set up. But remember, space is so critical here, and you can see on that track map in the top right corner of your screen just at the fact as drivers are now coming across that timeline to complete their opening qualifying lap, how condensed everybody is. And I think some drivers might consider spacing out or jumping to the pit lane to try and give themselves some extra breathing room, as it is the case that right now just one mistake could see a driver coming up close behind you. If a driver ahead of you makes a mistake, that's your whole lap potentially compromised. But we start focus the camera on Bo here, of course, as he comes through what is Westfields and now up towards Sheen Curve, as the result of the fact that he is our lead driver. We'll see what he's going to set as the lead reference time in this qualifying session. And we do say hello, of course, to you guys and girls in the chat. We hope you're all doing well. And remember, this broadcast, whilst it is being brought to you on the NXTGEN Racing official YouTube channel, the Twitch channel of mine, that's TX141 on Twitch, and also the NXTGEN Racing Facebook group, that's NXTGEN Racing on Facebook groups. Regardless of which platform you're watching it on, feel free to say hi. Do not be shy. We can see everything that you say. And if you do want to talk about your driver who you're supporting today, or alternatively your expectations, or just any thoughts you have about Brands Hatch, feel free to throw those thoughts in. As we see those times start to come in, and we see Bo there set in P3 so far, but Billy Fletcher striking hot with a 22.661 so far. That's quite a way of what we saw in the final practice session, as we see Caruana immediately going fastest here. A lot lot more laps still to come in as he just avoids a car there. It's gone very well and goes into the wall. Now, I'm not sure what's happened there, but we seem to have multiple cars having a bit of an instant down to Paddock Hill. And this was Arjan Bakker only moments ago, spinning in what was the apex, or coming off of the apex downhill from Paddock Hill Bend, as we now go back to live pictures. But there was also a car across the circuit as Caruana now returns to the circuit after jumping back to the pits here. And this is the thing that we were saying about the fact that it can be so dangerous around this circuit with regards to if a driver makes a mistake, you've got very little time to react because of how crowded the circuit is. But as you can see on the track map right now, a lot of our drivers concentrated towards the first half of the circuit, but there's a lot of space available on the second half. And I think some drivers will need to be wise and try to spot where that gap is going to open up to give themselves some breathing room. But meanwhile, where it's Caruana who's currently on that 22.296 fastest lap in the Pro class, we can see it's Mikael Andreasen here in the Audi R8 with the fastest lap in the amateur class, and his lap time, to give you an idea, 23.60, so the best part of 1.4 seconds off of our provisional pole sitter overall. But then it is the case that Stefan Rasmussen goes provisional pole in the amateur class. We're 23.376, 2 tenths faster than what is Andreasen, but George Bland matches him in terms of lap time, dead on. These two, Rasmussen and Bland, identical in lap time in the end, down to the 1,000th, and the McLaren driver really putting in the effort right now. And we do know he recognises the fact that the McLaren MP412C may not be the strongest car, but he's indifferent to that. Bland loves to take the underdog car and be that underdog, and he, as the championship leader right now in the amateur class, is doing everything he can. He's not holding back any punches here to get his final third of the season off to a fantastic start. As we check in with you guys and girls in the chat, and we can see Deegan87 there in the YouTube trying to load in my game for some reason, plays up when I try to join this race. If you can, Deegan, it might be an idea to have a quick chat with Matt Emmons, our organiser for this season. I believe he may be running around on circuit right now as well, but if you can somehow get a message through to him, he may be able to help, but that's very unfortunate. And we've also got in the Twitch chat there Rico Verhoeven, who's saying, come on Keenan. And where's Keenan, you may be asking right now? Well, let's try and find Chris Keenan for you. Here he is in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, of course, as he makes his way up through the right-hander of Hawthorns here. Currently P27 overall, on a lap time of 26.33, and just trying to do everything he can right now to get himself into a good qualifying position. This would put him P14 in the amateur class and P27 overall as it currently stands. As we see more and more lap times coming in here, the rubber being laid down on the circuit as well, and all of our drivers completely pushing to their absolute limit right now. We still do have 9 minutes of this qualifying session to go as it currently stands, and it's a good point to start talking about some of the faults of our drivers. Well, let's start off with one driver who right now is definitely doing a very good job in this qualifying session, and that is the Switchback Motorsport driver of Rasmussen, who you can see in the centre of your camera, currently parked in the pits. Now, what he was saying to me, the Dane, before he took to the circuit tonight, is that he just wants to try and race on his own Brands Hatch. For the reason being, he finds that this circuit is very difficult to get right. He doesn't have too much experience with the track either, so he just wants clear air and to be safe. Now, he was in the test event at Alton Park last time out, and what he was saying is that he probably that he was quite smart with regards to the fact that he was just trying to let the faster drivers through, and he may use that same technique tonight if he feels as though he's got a driver behind him who's significantly faster, say 2 to 3 seconds faster than him per lap, that he's not going to try and hold the driver up unless it's critical for position right at the end, for the simple reason at the end of the day he wants to have a clean and safe race at Brands Hatch, and I can completely understand him. And as he makes his way right now down through what is, oh goodness me, spinning it there through Graham Hill Bend on cold tyres, I would say, just needs to get the car up to temperature right now. We do look forward to seeing what Rasmussen can do, but he's just going to try and keep it together tonight and not make any major mistakes. That will be his target, and he'll classify that as a win if he makes it around without making any mistakes. But he does have a little bit of an international competition, and what we mean by that is between himself and his fellow Danish drivers. So we're looking at the likes of, say, Mikael Andreasen, who you can see here, and we've also got Alexander Batak, to name just 2 of the many Danes that we have racing around on the circuit. And that's great to hear that the Danes are having a little competition within their own nationality to see who is the fastest Dane or the most daring Dane of them all. As we can see Batak making his way right now, the Switchback Motorsport driver making his way down towards Hawthorns Corner here. Half the qualifying session remaining, just under what is now 7 minutes to go as that timer flicks up to 8 minutes there. Now, meanwhile, we come from our Danes to another driver, and that is to the German driver, Jochen Seeger, who we are just going to try and find somewhere around on the circuit right now. And I think it might be the case that he's not quite joined us as of yet. We've got a lot of drivers here, folks, and there is the German. We found him, and of course, how could we not find him? The Jägermeister machine, the BMW M4 in the brilliant orange-white colours there, as he makes his way down towards Graham Hill Bend. Now, currently P26 overall, 10th in class in this qualifying session. What Seeger was saying to me in the build-up is he's not expecting too much because this course does not, in his opinion, meet his talents for whatever reason. He'll be happy just to get some points, and he feels though because of how narrow the circuit is and the way it requires essentially for drivers when they're very crowded together at the start of the race to go for those early moves, because the fact it's so narrow and it's difficult to overtake, he feels it's going to be dangerous in the first few laps, and he's just going to target surviving here and try to have fun as well, which is what it's all about. But currently at the moment, not quite up there in terms of the pace compared to his fellow amateurs, but again, as he was saying, not really suited his talents this circuit, as we did see he just dodged a Porsche there that got a little bit wrong. I think that's Ben Fanes there, just getting it wrong into Dingledale, as we can see it coming through now the Stirling's corner here and heading down towards Clearways and out towards Clark Curve. We're going to stay with him until he completes this lap right now and see whether he is able to improve, but this is not looking to be too much of an improvement compared to his previous best, although I say that he's gone faster than his previous best in Sector 4, but everywhere else so far he has not improved. As he comes across that timeline, he does not improve in the end. He sets a 125.469, which does not match the 23.9 he has previously set, so a bit of a warm-up lap there. As we see Mark Baker, meanwhile, you're looking at the Ferrari driver here as he roars his way down towards Surtees corner here, currently P27, P11 in class, just chasing after Jochen Seeger in terms of that qualifying time, but he is almost half a second down. So there's quite a split between the top 10 of the amateurs and then further back in the amateur class, with Mark Baker leading the rest outside that top 10 right now, and you have to imagine who from outside that top 10 in the amateurs can break into that top 10 here in terms of qualifying. Now, going from our amateur drivers in terms of pre-race faults to one of our drivers who needs no introduction due to his calibre of driving in his cars, and particularly in the Lamborghini here. We see the CXR Project Black driver making his way through Sheen and up into Stirling's corner at turn 8 right now. Where you can see it's Edward Lack, or Ed Lack in short. And when I had the chance to catch up with Lack in the build-up to the race, I briefly called him as he was getting in the car. He was saying he's looking forward to tonight, but definitely will find it hard to pass. He expects it to be a difficult one for overtaking, so you can imagine right now qualifying needs to go his way, and it's not quite going his way at the moment. What of the fact he is at this point in time 2/10 of Kenny Herriman's, although I say that he does improve then to a 123.052, putting him P10 and only 2/100ths of a Tony Verschaff. As you can see, there's somebody getting it very wrong. That was Matthew Prouting, I believe, having a bit of a horror moment in the run-up towards Druids, and Lack just dodging the wayward Prouting, as right now Lack makes his way down towards Graham Hill Bend. 4 minutes of the qualifying session to go. And from one driver who is just looking to try and give it everything he can, but is wary of the overtaking, here's a driver who really does need a solid result tonight to keep his championship campaign on track, and that is the Briton of Nigel Stock, as he makes his way through the left-hand there of turn number 8, of course Stirling's corner, and makes his way down towards Clark Curve. He's currently P28 overall, P12 in the amateur class in this qualifying session, 3.5 minutes remaining, as we do see he briefly disappears there. This can happen when drivers have a little bit of wayward connectivity, but hopefully this issue's not going to persist. As Stock crosses that timeline, he does not improve this time around. But what he was saying to me in the build-up to this race is that Monza was a bit of a bad race, as he got involved in a number of crashes, and hopefully he wants to have a cleaner race this week and get 4th place back in the championship. So he has a target, get a good enough result to get 4th place back, or at least his campaign to 4th place in the amateur championship back on track, and we'll have to see whether he's able to achieve it. But right now we can see Billy Fletcher holding on to the overall provisional pole lap of a 122.131, 2/10 off of the fastest that we saw in the final practice session at 21.9. But we do wonder if we're going to see somebody jump into those 21s. Will it be Caruana? Will it be Fletcher? As we can see Caruana right now making his way out to the final corner and going on to what we believe a lap. That was just a warm-up lap here, and he goes on the offensive, and we'll wait to see. He's currently 1.5 or just over off of Fletcher, and then we have got a sizable gap of a further almost 2 tenths back to Jean-Louis Deschamps in P P3 right now, so it does seem as though Fletcher and Caruana have this shootout for pole position to themselves, but we'll wait and see whether the Delta Motorsport driver here of Deschamps is able to get into that mix and perhaps separate the two of them on that front row. As further down we do have Oystein Hereford here in P4, just trying to put in those solid laps. Now let's take a look at our newcomers, and we do have Pimbo here as he makes his way, goodness me, going a bit wide there through Sheen Curve, and the rear end of the car completely lets go, and that's the thing, you got to be so careful at Sheen Curve here. As we can see, he gets the car collected back together, but that was very, very on the limit of what was possible before he was going to go into the wall there. But this circuit really does punish those small mistakes, those small runoffs, and as soon as you go onto that grass, it's saying goodbye to your lap, and potentially even the car as he comes into the pits with flat spots on those tyres, no doubt. But currently P5 in the Pro class, really nicely done by looks of things by the newcomer today. And we also see it, we've got Robert Sunik here, Robert de Sunik I should say, his full name of course, in P7. A very good opening qualifying session from de Sunik, and indeed our newcomers in that Pro category really making themselves established. We've got Tony Verschaft as well right now, who does have, I believe it is the case that he does have one of the BMW, well no, he is in the BMW, he's got the traffic ahead of him. I think that's Dirt Bounce ahead of him, who is also a fellow pro driver. They're all on laps, by the way, it should be pointed out, so this is not intentional hold up. As we see Caruana improves that pole position up, he's raised the bar by 6 thousandths off screen to a 22.124, and now how will Fletcher respond given the fact we haven't got too much time remaining? As we do see Verschaft cross that timeline here, he does not improve, and nor does Dirt Bounce. Then neither of them do improve right now, and they continue around. And we should also point out, great news, he was talking to us in the chat earlier on about the fact he was having some technical issues joining, but we've got Deegan Fairclough out onto circuit right now, and he's currently in P6. That's phenomenal stuff from the Ferrari driver as he makes his way right now through Hawthorns. He hasn't had as long in this qualifying session, but he doesn't need that long if he's going to make it count like that. This is impressive stuff from the pro driver as he makes his way down through Dingle Dell and up towards Sheen Curve here. He's only a 10th off a Bow. Will he be able to find a way to usurp the P5 driver as he's now on his final qualifying lap, we believe? Everyone now really coming to their final laps. Caruana has come into the pits, I should point out. Where's Fletcher and all this? He's coming through Druid, so we'll make our way back to Fairclough as he makes his way to the end of his final qualifying lap here. Does he improve? He comes out the final corner. He is up in the final 2 sectors. Is he going to be up here in the last of the sectors as he comes across that line? Does he improve? And it does not look to be an improvement from Deegan Fairclough, so as a result, he will not be moving up from P6. What about Fletcher? How can he respond? And also in the battle in the amateur category right now, it is Rasmussen who's just crossed that timeline. I think his qualifying session may have ended, but he's literally match bland in terms of qualifying time, and I think it's beyond the thousandths. I think it's to the 10 thousandths that Rasmussen has taken that pole position in the amateur class. That is incredible between the two of them. Identical lap times down to the thousand. You can expect that Rasmussen and Bland will be going to war very early on at the Brands Hatch circuit right now. But remember that Rasmussen will start a row in front of Bland because of the fact they've qualified P14 and 15 overall. And we have the intermixed grid for the races. But Fletcher, as he comes out the final corner, will the Lamborghini driver be able to improve? Our championship leader in the pro category who really needs that momentum as he comes across the timeline here. Is it enough to improve? And it is not the case. He does not improve. So Caruana takes pole in the end in the pro category over Fletcher by 6 thousandths of a second. And Jean-Louis Deschamps is the best of the rest in P3. As we see de Sunik right now make his way around the circuit. But everyone finished off their laps. We see Ben Faines improving to P6. Ed Lack improving to P8 with 22.896 in the end. And we've got Kenny Heremans who's just parking up after not improving there. And this pretty much concludes qualifying, ladies and gentlemen, as Rasmussen crosses the timeline there. Does not improve. So we do have a dead heat in the amateur class in terms of those qualifying laps, but Rasmussen takes it by 10 thousandths in the end, it must be, as it means that now we look forward to the race. But a brilliant qualifying session, and definitely it's setting us up for a phenomenal race ahead, as I believe the only driver we do have right now making their way around the circuit as our camera is just trying to follow them through is de Sunik right now as he makes his way into the left-hander here of what is Sterling's corner. Now we also do have the driver of Wedder who will be seen, Lambert Wedder, who will be potentially join us later on in the season, if not today, that should be pointed out. But everybody has left the circuit now, and we now get ready for race number 1. The sprint race, the 15-minute race, as everybody takes to the grid. And we get our camera pointed right there, and you can see here everybody lining up the pace car behind them. We are, by the looks of things, going to have a full warm-up lap here before we get underway with the double file rolling start rather than the partial lap. But you can see everybody mounting themselves onto that grid right now. And to give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, we have got 38 drivers taken to the Brands Hatch circuit. 38 drivers crammed into this very tight and twisty circuit. It is going to be something special indeed. It's going to be a very tight couple of opening laps, and you have to forgive me if we do miss some overtakes because there's going to be so much racing action. But right now, as we look down towards that start line, it is the case that Caruana starting on pole in the end with that brilliant qualifying lap ahead of Fletcher. As we look further down, well, in fact, we've got a very distant camera there. We've got the closest camera we possibly can have here. Looking a bit further back, we can see Navarro de Bova in the end, qualifying at P25 overall, P9 in that amateur class. Not able to get himself quite up there compared to the rest of the amateurs. But what we can see in particular is that our two lead amateurs on that identical lap time down to 1,000 of Stefan Rasmussen and also George Bland, we can see at P14 and P15 respectively, they are in a little bit of a world of their own. They've got both the pros of Ben Hicks and Jeremy de Bova between them, and then P3 man in the amateur class, which is Matthew Prouting. And that is absolutely great for them, of course, because they do have the pro drivers to act as spacing tools effectively. That can prove rather useful. As we take a look at the blimp cam right now, indeed, waiting for everything to get underway, you can see this whole field lined up, ready to go, raring to go. I think some drivers might be considering starting from the pit lane, but it will be, as we get underway here, it will be the Luxim 24 lockout on the front row that takes us away, with Matt Caruana in particular being our lead driver as they take away from the grid slots here. Now, it is going to be, of course, a manual double file rolling start. Caruana will build up the pace over the course of this warm-up lap into the rolling start procedure. And the question really is, what can Caruana do early on with regards to this? They go at the green, of course, and it will be one of those situations as they all make their way up the hill. You can see Caruana getting a bit ahead of the safety car here. Both drivers indeed are doing that. And I think it's the case that they're trying to get the safety car to get a bit of a hurry up here as they get ready to go racing. And meanwhile, Jeremy Bova, of course, starting in P17 position. What can he do down here? What can he do to try and get himself up into the top 10 in the pros? Or will he just simply see this one as a bit of a warm-up race and try to get himself a good starting position for the feature race? Both races are worth equal points, so it's not a case that you get more points for a good finish in the feature race compared to the sprint race, and that avoids potential setting up of the grid or intentionally trying to rig your results to get the better result in the race with a greater number of points, as which some series you may see that happen where drivers trying to position themselves as best as possible for a particular race. But as they all make their way around right now, we can see coming all the way down towards what is Hawthorns. Now we look back up towards our leaders here with Ben Faines making his way in that third grid slot position, so a third row grid slot position here in that P6, and he will be looking to have a good start versus Pinbell as they make their way down through. And you can see the Porsche and the Audi drive side by side here as they come through Hawthorns corner, and they're definitely going to be looking very dicey to go racing. A bit further down, of course, we do have our driver here, the Switchback Motorsport driver. Looks thinks he's confirmed as Switchback Motorsport, and that of course is Oosterhuis as he makes his way down towards Sterling's corner here, and Morton will be looking to try and get a good result starting in that P29 position. He is a long way back, and that is P13 in the amateur class. He will want to try and salvage something out of this opening race. And even further back, of course, we do have Matt Emmons and Gareth Mills here. You see them both making their way up the hill and towards Sheen Curve right now. Emmons in the Audi R8, Mills the GM Mobile, the GM Motorsport M4 as they make their way through. But we now look back up towards the front drivers here as they get ready to go racing. Some slight connectivity issues there, but they have been resolved, and as they make their way through, it's for Matt Caruana to take us away. And they go green as they make their way down the straight. It is the opening race. It is the sprint race. Race number one as they come charging down the hill towards Paddock Hill Bend here. And as they come into the right-hander, we can see immediately drives going on the offensive here. Pitbo under pressure, and Ben Faines in particular under increasing pressure from Deegan Fairclough as they come up into Druids Bend. And Fairclough going for the move very early on and getting the move done nice and early there for P6. As we see Dasunik, meanwhile, also on the offensive here. And well, it's the case he's being attacked, I should say, by Ed Lack. Oh, goodness me, Dasunik. And that looks to be, I believe that was, well, goodness me, is one of our drivers there who both had a spin, as we're seeing right now everything really kicking off, and Dasunik and one of our drivers really coming together. And I think that may have been the Laming who was in that contact. As we see here, it's Faines versus Lack. Lack going around the outside as they come charging down the hill towards Hawthorns corner. You can see that Fairclough having to hold off Bo here as they make their way through. This is the battle for P5. Four drivers, I should say, competing for it. Although I say five now because Harry Melvin is right at the back of this group And then you've got Kenny Heremans right now, who's really leading the next pack of the field in that P10 position as they all come charging up through Dingle Dell and in towards Sheen Curve right now. And as we look back up towards that battle for P5, we can see it's the case that Melvin are looking for the move here versus Lack as they come through. This is for P8 right now. They're going to have a drag race down towards what is Clark Curve here at the end of lap number 1. It's going to be Lack on the inside defending versus Melvin on the outside, and it is the case the Ignium Motorsport driver not able to find a way through, but he goes for the cutback. Will he be able to find it? It's a drag race across that start timing line, and as they make their way onto that second lap, you can see it's Melvin on the inside here who got it via cutback. Melvin up into P8, holding onto the position. Further back, meanwhile, we can see Bland versus Rasmussen. Rasmussen's gone deep. This is for the lead in the amateur class here as they both make their way through the right-hander, and it is Bland who is now up into the lead of the amateur class as Jeremy DeBova comes through on the inside as well. And look at this, Alexander Patak has come through. You've got Prouting behind him, and as they come roaring down the hill here towards Graham Hill Bend, we can see Rasmussen dropping from left to right, and now I believe that is Dirt Bounce who's behind them as Wayne has gone around Rasmussen, and Ollie Wayne in particular in the Mercedes there in the number 186 car has now got himself up into P16. That is the equivalent of P4 in the amateur class right now, and is going hunting after Prouting, who's just up the road, as we hear that Fairclough has made an, oh goodness me, there's major contact in towards Hawthorne's corner between what's Fairclough there and I believe that's Hereford, and as they both try to recover their cars, you can see how the fact you've got the whole pack coming through, and that means that these two have now got to wait for an incredibly long time. That's a disaster. Well, let's take a look at what happened. That's not quite what we wanted to see. That we will try and catch what happened very shortly, but as they're making their way through, it looks as though Hereford on the inside there, and just a brief tap on the rear right side panel there of Fairclough's car, and I believe that was also one of our new cars, that was Ben Faines who got caught up in that. But as we come back to live pictures right now, that completely tips the balance, and after 2 laps it is the case that Carolina right now is leading ahead of Billy Fletcher. These two have broken away from the field. Jean-Louis Deschamps in P3 in a bit of a lonesome P3. Then we've got Pim Bow on his debut in P4 right now, having to battle with Harry Melvin and Lack, and you can see Melvin and the Ignium Motorsport Huracan versus Lack's Huracan from CXR Project Black. The two of them side by side into Graham Hill Bend, and Melvin just ahead for the time being, but you can imagine that Lack's going to try and come back at him as soon as possible, as we see Heremans behind here looking for a trail break to sneak up the inside through Surtees. He's not able to find it this time, but he does have Ben Hicks behind him in P8. There's Hicks in P8. Meanwhile, behind there you've got Ben Faines, who after that incident between Fairclough, Hereford and also Faines has now dropped down to P9, and then we've got George Bland, the leader of the amateurs here, right in amongst the pros as he makes his way through Hawthorne's corner in P10. Jeremy DeBover in P11, Matthew Prouting in P12, the second of our amateur drivers, and then look in the rear of your picture, you can see there you've got Batak having to defend versus Ollie Wayne, but Wayne looking for a move into Westfield. That was never going to happen, but he's got the momentum up the hill here through Dingle down to Sheen. They're side by side through Sheen, and you can't go too wide through Sheen, but they've proven us wrong there as they make their way now into Sterling's, and it is the case that Batak has lost the place, and Rasmussen is now on the offensive, but look at Dirt Bounce. He's trying to come through here. He's the pro driver in amongst all the amateurs, and you can see that it's the case that Rasmussen defending versus Bounce right now. He doesn't want to let Bounce through because he's concerned about the fact that he's going to lose the momentum to the guys in front as they come up towards another lap. They go on to lap number 4, and as they come into the braking zone here, you can see the fact that Bounce just not able to find a way through, as behind them it's Arjan Backer versus Matthew Addy. Addy on the inside coming through Paddock Hill Bend. This is the battle for P16. Addy in the Ferrari, Backer in the Porsche, and as they come through you can see Andreasen there trying to sneak on the inside, the slow and steady racing driver, as they come down their hill here into what is a Graham Hill Bend. A little bit of contact on the rear end, and it does look as though Andreasen's car whoa, there was a bit of lag there, and Backer's just gone for a spin into the wall there coming out of Graham Hill Bend, and I'm wondering if that was the contact between Mikael Andreasen that set that off. It did look as though there was a little bit of contact there, but again that might have just been a connectivity issue that we saw on our end as they now make their way down towards Hawthorne's corner, and as they come all the way down we can see a little bit further back it is the case that meanwhile in the battle for that P10 position in the amateur class, P20 overall, we have got End over here, Navarro DeBova. He's battling with Stock, and Stock trying to come through, but Nigel Stock not able to find a way through in the Lamborghini behind the purple, pink and white machine of what is Navarro DeBova as they come through Sheen Curve here and now head down towards what is Sterling's corner for the 4th time of asking. Although we've got a car, oh goodness me, we've got a car spun there on, oh my good lord, we have got multiple cars involved in a collision here, and that's Matt Emmons as well who's been clipped in that instant. Now I'm not sure what's kicked all this off, but we have had a major incident. Let's find out. So this was moments ago. That's Matthew Addy in the Ferrari and the Switchback Motorsport machine in front there, getting it wrong in the corner, and Addy was clipped by it, and as he's come back around, the car's just come loose and across the road, and you can see there Matt Emmons clipping the Switchback Motorsport BMW that was parked, and that is why those three drivers have all had an absolute nightmare of a moment, and they've jumped back to the pits, and that is a complete horror show for them as we look back up towards our leader right now, Caruana, who is leading by 2 seconds. He's run away, he's broken a little bit of a gap versus Fletcher, and well, we see our leaders. Let's look a bit further back, and we can see it's a case that Harry Melvin has just jumped to the pit, and I believe we have had confirmation that Prouty has had a major incident. We are literally getting incidents being reported left, right and centre by our trackside marshals, as we can see here that Fane's in P8 right now chasing down Jeremy DeBover, and these guys, they are gaining positions where everybody is losing ground, and I think we have just had something happen with regards to Billy Fletcher, because Fletcher has dropped all the way down to P6, our championship leader in the Pro Class. What's happened to Fletcher? So he was in a spin there, and that looks as though he was coming down the hill. Let's take a look further back. Can we find out what happened? Well, sideways coming out of Westfield corner there. We can't see the main instant, but Billy Fletcher having a major moment. And as he makes his way back racing here, we can see that that's George Bland at the head of your camera. He's P5 overall right now. He's a bit of a way off of the guys in the top 4, but still the amateur driver in a world of his own. And it's Ollie Wayne in the P2 in the amateur class, P9 overall. As we are hearing that even more instances are starting to kick off, and well, is Matthew Prouting, who was involved in a major incident earlier on. We can see him here in P13 as he makes his way out of Druids Corner and comes down the hill now towards Graham Hill Bend. Only half the race remaining right now. We've just passed that halfway point, but it has been a very dramatic opening half to this race. You could not imagine it was going to be this dramatic, although I say that it is Brands Hatch, of course, and there can be some major drama, but we have had some considerable incidents as we see Prouting going on the hump versus Patak. And let's just try to find out what did happen to Prouting those moments ago. So this was in the run up towards Surtees corner. That's Ben Fanes ahead of him. Now what happened to Prouting as he came through the corner here? He's making his way through and just simply lost the rear end on the exit of Surtees, and the car went for a 360. I mean, style points for getting the car recovered like that, but definitely a wounded BMW now for Prouting as he makes his way down towards Sterling's corner on what is lap number 6. But as we look to our live pictures once again, we can see that we have got some change of places, and Van Hoenacker, oh goodness me, Van Hoenacker making his way through. What's happened here? We've got even more incidents kicking off. Van Hoenacker into the wall on the run in towards Sterling's corner here, and I think there was a wayward Porsche involved in that incident as well, as we can see all of our drivers coming through right now, and I believe that may have been the Porsche of Navarro de Bova involved in that incident. Let's take a look back. So this is made noise for right. So Van Hoenacker simply got it wrong, as did Navarro de Bova, and that explains what happened. They just ran wide out of Sheen, as we have seen before, and it is the case that Van Hoenacker having a moment with the wall, and Navarro de Bova straight lining across Sterling's by running wide. So that explains everything right now as our time screens are updated. But meanwhile, as we look back up towards our race leader right now in a world of his own, it would seem is Caruana as he makes his way through Sheen Curve here. But further back, we can see that Kenny Herriman's right now in the battle for P3 with Ed Lack closing up here with only 6 minutes to go, 5.5 minutes to go, plus the lap they need to finish on as they make their way down the hill through Dingledale and up towards Sheen Curve here. Such a dangerous corner. It's caught so many drivers out so far today, and when we say dangerous, of course, we mean in terms of driving on the limit, not in terms of health and safety, as we can see here that Herriman's chasing after lap, but falling back a little bit as they make their way down towards Clark Curve. And we see Ed Knight there in the YouTube chat, of course, wishing on everything for what is Harry Melvin. Unfortunately, Harry having that incident, of course, is now going to have to try and find a way back into things in the feature race, because he is in the pit. He has retired the car, as I've come to understand, but this is the battle for P3 we're looking at. And hold on a second, we've got a car off the road there. Oh goodness me, somebody's got it very wrong, and it's the case that Herriman's has had to take evasive action. Now whose Mercedes was that, you ask? We're just going to try and find out for you folks, but again, just one moment there and it has seen it all come down. I think that was Rhys Young. Let's take a look at what happened. So this was Rhys Young a moment ago, a lap down on these guys behind, and as he's come through the right-hander, he's just simply gone deep into Paddock Hill Bend. But watch how he's tried to get the car back under control, but he's just simply rode onto the exit curve, and Herriman's had nowhere to go, and oh my good lord, he was hit on the front end by I think that was Billy Fletcher as he came through, but Fletcher able to survive the contact, whereas Rhys Young has jumped to the pits. Oh my goodness me, and a lot of drivers being claimed right now by the British circuit, as we see looking at further down our order in the live live pictures. We've got Ben Hicks here in the Ignium Motorsport Huracan chasing after Ollie Wayne. Now remember, Wayne is in the amateur class, Hicks is in the pro class, so they're not battling for class points right now. They're just battling for overall position. And behind then you've got Dirt Bounce, who he was in a sea of amateurs earlier on, but he's found his way clear of it. And as they make their way up into Sterling's corner here, it is the case that for Bounce, he would love to have an opportunity to attack Hicks, and he will probably try to use Wayne's positioning here in order to get the shot at Hicks, but we'll wait to see whether that does come to fruition as we are here. And there's been a bit of an incident further down the order. I think Tom Porter has been involved in some sort of incident further around the circuit. We will take a look at that now, and that is Tom Porter right there. Of course, the privateer making his way down towards Hawthorne's corner, but I think he's had a spin coming out Surtees. This was only moments ago. You can see Matthew Addy behind Porter here, and this was looking at what was the battle for at the time, P31, and under braking, Porter's just simply brought the rear end too rapidly round, and that's where it has gone wrong for Porter. He's down in P32. But meanwhile, as we look back up towards the front of the field, or really the mid-pack of the field, we can see Janssen here on his debut from Team Racing Netherlands in the BMW M4, making his way up into the right-hander here of Druid, and behind that's Oystein Hereford here, who's trying to come back into this race after that incident between himself and another driver coming through what was Hawthorne's corner on the early laps. Of course, that major drama, seeing him coming up through the field right now as he makes his way up into the left-hander here of what is Surtees' corner, and as he comes through, it is the case pressing on all as much as he possibly can, but now as he chases after what is Janssen here, you can imagine the two BMW drivers will go toe-to-toe. Will Hereford be able to find a way through, or will it be the case that Janssen is able to hold on with only 2.5 minutes remaining right now, as our timing screen is glitching a little bit there, and we are seeing that Caruana is quote-unquote dropping through the field, but he's not. In fact, it is just a glitch. Caruana is still leading this race, as you see Jean-Louis Deschamps here in P2 right now, trying to chase after him, but the gap between the two of them quite sizable at this current point in time, and in fact it is a 14-second gap as it's currently listed. That is a phenomenal gap that Caruana's pulled out, and Deschamps just focusing on the race and what he can do. As we see a little bit further down, we do have Mikkel Andreasen, I believe, hunting down Jochen Seeger here, and we ride on board with Mikkel as he makes his way through the right-hander of Druids here and down the hill towards Graham Hill Bend. Now, with limited time available, of course, and he's getting closer by the corner to Seeger, he's going to have to find a way to try and make the attack in the Audi R8 versus the M4 driver ahead of him. Now, where can he do it? He could go for it into Surtees here, because it is a rotational-based corner, and that's where the Audi is going to be very strong, mid-engine rear-wheel drive. But as he comes out the corner, of course, he needs to get it done before Apex, so he can get himself alongside, because Seeger can simply get on the power nice and early coming out the corner, and then in the run down towards Hawthorne's, which they're now going into Hawthorne's, you can see Seeger's able to hold that position. He doesn't have to worry about going defensive into the extended right-hander before coming down Derek Minter straight into the Westfield bend of what is turn number 6. Now, as they make their way out here, no real overtaking opportunity through Dingledale up into Sheen, but he can place the car quite closely to the back of the Germans. Can the Danes? They make their way through. Both drivers really struggling there on the apex of Sheen as they come into the left-hander right now. Stern, as you can see that gap opening up once again, and I believe that's Ben Faines ahead of him, who's had an off at what is Sterling's corner there, and as a result, we can see Andreasen backing off a little bit here as we jump back to the external cameras right now, and we can see Faines all over the back of Alexander Batak here after running wide out of Sterling's corner. He's dropped all the way down to P12 as they make their way across the timeline. The white flag is out for these guys as they come through Paddock Hill Bend, and you can see there, oh goodness me, in the rear of your picture you've got Alexander Batak and Seeger coming together there, and I do think Batak went a bit deep into Paddock Hill Bend and Seeger tried to seize the opportunity, but it's come to curse him. As a result, he's on the curb coming out of Paddock Hill Bend. Can he get the car out of the way? He can. We've only got 15 seconds of this race to go, but this has been a very dramatic race, and oh my goodness, I believe he may have clipped a driver there. As we can see, Navarro Debova getting it wrong. Everybody trying to return to the circuit right now, and it is not going very well. But for one driver who has had it go very well, Matt Caruana right now, as he comes to the end of his 11th lap of the circuit, he will come through to take the win in the sprint race at Brands Hatch in round number 9. A brilliant drive from Matt Caruana in the pro category there, winning in the end by 16 seconds over Jean-Louis Deschamps in the end. Deschamps coming through the right-hander of Clark Curve right now to take his P2. A great drive from the Porsche driver here, the Delta Motorsport driver, putting in another solid solid performance, which he'll be very happy about. And then behind them, look at this, Edward Lack coming in P3, and then it's Fletcher in P4, and George Bland taking the win in the amateur class in the sprint race. A brilliant drive from Bland in the end, coming home well clear of the rest of the amateur pack. Kenny Harriman's in P6 overall, P5 for the pros. Jeremy DeBoe over there, a great result for him as well, P7 overall. Ollie Wayne coming home P2 in the amateur class, and that is P8 overall. Ben Hicks there in P9, Dirt Bounce in P10, and then we've got Ben Faines in coming home P11 with a very dramatic race of Faines. Pinball on his debut in his first race started off very well, but it went very wrong towards the end, and coming home P12. Then we've got Mikkel Andreasen, and rounding off our podium for the amateur drivers here. It wasn't to be the perfect one, but he did put in a great result there, and in the end picked up those positions with Siger and what was Batak having that major incident. As we can see, our drivers just making their way through to complete their races right now. And I do believe we've still got a little bit of battling going on here as we're trying to get our cameras back on. And that's Mark Baker battling with Keenan to the finish, with Knocker to the finish line, but he wasn't able to get that P23 off on Jürgen Knocker in the end. And Knocker able to hold on to the position. Both of the drivers battling for the amateur class, of course. But that was a very, very dramatic race number one. And I do think that right now a lot of our drivers will be thinking about the upcoming race. But whilst they're thinking about that, of course, we'll be right back with the post-race interviews with our winners in both of the classes. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss it. Alrighty then, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's get our post-race interviews for the sprint race underway, and we'll start off with our winner in the pro category, and that is the number 79 car of Matt Carana. Hello Matt, can you hear me?
Hello.
Matt, congratulations on the win in the sprint race at Brands Hatch. How does it feel to have added another win to your growing set of wins in this series?
It's really good. I was really worried about this race because it's a small track and there's lots of cars on the track, and I was worried I wasn't going to get a qualifying lap in, but I managed to get it in. And then in the race, I was just trying to keep it on the track, watch out for any chaos, but I managed to keep it on the track.
And dialing it all the way back, so it was a brilliant approach to the race. In qualifying as well, it looked as though whilst you did have the pole lap in qualifying in, there was a little bit more out there based on the fact you set a 21.9 in that practice session.
Yeah, I did do a 21.8 in the qualifying session, but I hit the wall right at the end of the lap, so it didn't actually count. So that was a bit annoying, but it's fine.
And coming on to the race, with the breaking away from the field and just having Fletcher behind you, was there any sort of worry about being pulled back into the main field, or did you just see it as yourself and your teammate having that fight to the end?
I wasn't really worried about anyone behind. I was just worried about Billy going for a move or something, and I was just trying to keep him behind and build a gap to everyone else, and then we can obviously have a fight.
Now, looking ahead to the feature race, of course, you'll be starting right at the back of what is going to be a very tight field. What do you have in mind for trying to sneak your way through to the front?
Uh, I think the main goal is just stay out of the chaos because there's going to be so many crashes. I think, but if I can just get through, then I think I'll be okay.
Well, we wish you the best luck in the feature race, but thank you for joining us in the interview box, and congratulations once again on a brilliant win in the sprint.
Thank you.
Here and there, of course, Matt Caruana very happy with his performance in that part of the race, and now we look ahead to what is coming up in the ahead to what is going to be happening in the feature for him. But we go from our winner in the pro category to the amateur category, and we now welcome George Bland very shortly. Hello, George, can you hear me?
Hi, Paul, I can.
George, congratulations on the win in the sprint. How does it feel to have taken the win at Brands Hatch?
Thanks. Yeah, it feels quite good. I do like the track at Brands, so I'm kind of glad I won after a good qualifying. So yeah, quite happy.
Just dialing things back with regards to that qualifying session, just take us through that feeling, matching the lap time with your fellow competitor Rasmussen down to the thousandth of a second. Are you guys being separated by tens of thousandths in the end? How does that feel?
Oh, it's pretty crazy to know that we're both so similar in pace. But yeah, it's odd that it's the exact same time. One in a million.
And then translating that into the race, that changed your sort of psyche going into the race, given the fact that you were starting, of course, in a bit of a midfield position, whilst you were going to be battling with Rasmussen for the win. Were you thinking about the survival aspects, or was it, I need to get ahead as soon as possible?
It was a bit of both. Obviously, I didn't want to drag it out longer than necessary, but at the same time, I wanted to just keep a level head. Even if I finished second, I'd have took that over not finishing at all. But yeah, pushing for the win was obviously priority.
And definitely, as the incident started to pile up ahead of you and behind you as well, when you saw that you were battling in the end for what was at one point, I think it was Herriman's for P4 overall, what was going through your mind at that point? You're right up there with the pros.
Yeah, it did feel a bit weird, to be honest, but I just tried to pretend that I was just mid-pack, don't think of the position, and take each car as it comes.
And now looking ahead to the feature race, of course, you're going to be starting quite a way in the back of the field. What's the plan?
Yeah, survive. Unlike all my previous starts from the back, it's they've never ended well for me. I've always been caught in drama. So this time I really am going to try and keep my nose clean and hopefully follow some of the pros through.
Well, we have our fingers crossed for you. The best luck in the feature race. But until then, thank you for joining us in the interview box, and congratulations once again on the win in the sprint.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
And a very happy George Bland there with another solid result to add to his tally of performances in the amateur class over this season. And of course, they're talking about the need to survive, much like Caruana was talking about the need to survive in the feature race starting towards the back. Of course, Bland's going to be starting, I believe, the 5th position from the back, and as a result it is going to be a very challenging race for both of those drivers there. But of course, Brands Hatch presents its own challenges, and that's why we do have that reverse grid race in the series, i.e. the reverse grid for the feature race, because we have those 60 minutes and for our drivers to come through. Now, with our post-race interviews for the sprint race concluded, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back within the next 5 to 8 minutes. Our target time to come back for you will be at 5 to 9. So that is in approximately 7 minutes, in fact. And we'll be back to bring you the feature race. But don't go anywhere. Feel free to quickly hop away and grab yourself a cup of tea or a snack. But you will not want to miss the feature, I can assure you. We'll see you soon. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for the build-up to what is the feature race. We've only got moments to go before we go racing once again at Brands Hatch for the 1 hour. And whilst we're waiting for that build-up, of course, we can see here we've got Mark Baker parked up in the pits. A little bit of a lonely presence right now. Most of our drivers opted to stay in their garages in preparation for going racing. But we are back once again. We had our word there, of course, from Apex Racing Academy, one of our 2 senior partners for this series. But as we bring the final practice session to a close before we go racing, we're just waiting for all of our drivers to take to the circuit. As we can just see, it is Baker right now, currently parked up, and there we get the transition to the setting of the grid. So all of our drivers will now be coming out of their garages, and we will see them all beginning to line up. As we just reload all the data there for you, and we can see with our camera panning over that they're starting to form that grid. Of course, we've got Baker parked up on the grid as it currently stands, and we are just waiting for all of our other drivers to form the grid here. I think there might be an instance whereby we are missing a driver or 2, and I do actually think we might be having some slight technical issues, ladies and gentlemen. We will be right back. I think we've got some technical issues here. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and we've resolved those technical issues. There were some slight issues with respect to the server, but those have now been resolved and we are getting ready to go racing. It's the feature race, the 1 hour long race with the strategic element, of course, of that mandatory pit stop for fuel, and our drivers will be going racing once again. Matt Emmons lines up on the pole position with that disastrous sprint race. Of course, alongside him will be Harry and Melvin. The second row will consist of Gareth Mills and Rhys Young. Matthew Prouting and Stefan Rasmussen will line up on the third row. Then we've got Arjan Kregel and Didi de Vlaming line up on the fourth row. Arjan Backer and Tom Poulter on the fifth row, and then round off our sixth row, our front six rows, we've got Tony Verschaft and Kurt Van Hoenack. And I'm already hearing that Rick Jansen has jumped to the pits, and it may be the case that some of our drivers are looking to start from the pit lane as we now head away for the formation lap. Now, keeping in mind here, of course, we do have that formation lap, and we are still waiting for some of our drivers to get themselves fully underway here. It is going to be one of those major challenges with respect to absolutely nailing the start here, as we see everybody making their way up towards what is Druids Bend right now. And as the cinematic camera switches between our drivers here, oh goodness, we've got a car spell rate. Alexander Batat having a spin very early on. That is... well, and we've got a lot of drivers parking up as a result of that. I'm not sure what's happened there with Batat. It does seem as though the car's completely come loose as he's made his way down the hill, and it's him who's tapped the back of Batat and sent him into the wall there with damage very early on. And that is a disaster for Batat, and that is in the rolling start sequence. When you look back to live pictures here, and it's the case he's going to recover that car right now, as we can see our leaders in this pack as they're just loading in with all their liveries, of course, making their way down towards what is Hawthorne's corner right now. And as they make their way down, they're half the way through the lap already, but Batak having an absolute horror start. And as a result, I think the stewards are going to be frowning very heavily on that one. As we can see, it's the case that our drivers are all making their way through. And as we see there, Big Bacon Gaming, thank you for raiding on Facebook. And we really do appreciate it and glad you're enjoying it. And to all the people who have joined us recently, hello to you all, and I hope you're all doing well. And do let us know what you're looking out for in this race. As right now our drivers are making their way down towards Sheen Curve, and they'll start to get ready for that run starting. It will be Matt Emmons who are having the worst of the finishes in the sprint race. Of course, he's starting off on pole with that reverse grid, and the amateur driver will be taking this way. He has Harry Melvin alongside him, and I can imagine that Melvin wants to absolutely capitalise on this. So they make their way now down onto clearways here, and they get ready to go racing. And we're green and we're going racing immediately. As you can see, Matt Emmons, they're going on the offensive, coming out of Clark Curve and behind. Whilst he's had a good start, you can see we've already got a four-way fight starting to brew in the battle for P5. That's Rhys Young at the head of this column, as we see Rasmussen from Switchback Motorsport trying to go round the outside, but it's not being found. Kregel, meanwhile, holding on to that P6 position as it's Young who's gone off already, coming out of Paddock Hill Bend. And as they all make their way down in towards Druids now, you can see we've got Keenan there on the outside battling what we believe that is, we've got Addy just ahead of him right now. Matthew Addy actually getting through there up into the Druids Bend, but as they come side by side here through what is Graham Hill, you can see just ahead, and you've got Tom Porter there who's trying to hold a position right now on the offensive versus Kurt Van Hoenack, and we can see behind it's Addy who's trying to get very offensive, as we've also got Mark Baker in the mix here. Baker versus Keenan as they come out of Surtees and head down towards Hawthorne's here, and it does look as though Keenan's got an inside defensive line here, as we can see Bow trying to catch up here. Bow, of course, trying to force his way through as the pro driver here, making their way into the right hand of Hawthorne. Here's a case, you've got Baker and Prowl on the inside there, and Prowl coming through Hawthorne's here and up into Westfield here. I think he's going to have to yield the position. There's no way to defend that. As we look a little bit further back, we can see Jürgen Nocker here just getting ahead of Robert Tasunik for the time being, but will there be a return here as they make their way up into Sheen Curve? No, they settle down all into an order, as we see a bit of smoke being kicked up there, and as they make their way through, we can see there's Sunik on the inside. He goes to the move into Sterling's Bend, and it's the case that Nocker being caught there, as we can see Hereford also trying to come through. So after one lap, it's Matt Emmons leading by 7 tenths of a second ahead of Harry Melvin in P2. They're both the leaders in the pro and the amateur class. And then we've got Gareth Mills in P3 right now. Matthew Proutin chasing after in P4. Then Rasmussen in P5. Then we've got Tony Verschaft in P6. The pro driver, the second of our pro drivers. Then we've got Arjan Bakker in P7. Under increasing pressure right now from Kregel as Kregel goes very deep. And so DD Blaming and also Proud. Oh, goodness me, we've got a car that spun up onto what is the curb in there. And that's Kurt Van Hoenack, who's had a disaster at Druids as he makes his way through. He makes his way through the corner right now, and as they come out there, the challenge machine having a disastrous moment there. And as we can see, Fane's trying to go around as they go 3 wide, and oh my good lord, Van Hoenack there had nowhere to go. Fane's trying to go all the way around, but it wasn't to work out for the Belgian. We'll take a look back at that very shortly, but that was a pass that I do not think was ever going to happen, but he was just in the worst possible place at the wrong time. As we look back up right now, we can see DD Blaming here, the Porsche driver in the middle of your camera, making his way through that right-hander of what is Westfield Bend, and now coming up towards Sheen Curve, and you can see about on the offensive here as behind them we have got Kregel here, who I believe is in a bit of a battle with, I see that's Mark Baker ahead, but the Ferrari driver Baker has got ahead right now, and as they make their way in to Sterling Spen, you can see Keenan now on the hit list for Dasunik as they make their way through that left-hander and now down towards what is not Sheen Curve, Clark Curve, goodness me, get the names right, Paul, as they make their way through the right-hander here up towards what is the start-finish line once again. Onto lap number 3 they go here, and definitely whilst it hasn't been perhaps as dramatic as the opening lap in the sprint race, there's still been drama, and we can see behind Oystein Hereford here making the move on in Navarro Debova there, a little bit of contact between the two of them, but it seems as though it's settled down. Well, Navarro a bit unsettled there as they make their way up into Druids Bend. You can see Dirt Bounce looking on the inside here, and that's also Ben Fanes and Billy Fletcher both trying to come through as well. Fanes of course involved in that instant early on with Laming as they make their way now down into what is Graham Hill Bend, and Fletcher making his way through nice and early, 3.5 minutes into the race. He's already up into P17 as the pro driver, and that is the effect of P8 in his class as he makes his way through the left-hander of what is Surtees. Meanwhile, up in P3 here, we can see we've got Verschaft, who's cleared Rasmussen right now. The pro driver chasing after Proutin next. And speaking of where's the driver, where is Matt Emmons right now, who after having that really good start, of course, he does seem to have fallen a bit away. And Melvin has had a phenomenal clearance as a result, and he's really run away with things right now, as perhaps we would expect. As we can see, Matt Emmons is in the pits right now. We're not sure what's happened to our amateur leader, who's dropped all the way out, but our amateur leader is now held by Prouting, who we can see here in the lead BMW as he makes his way through what is the right hander there of the final corner, turn 9 or Clark Curve, and now heads on to the start finish straight to go on to another lap here. We can see in the rear picture of a shout, and behind them you've got Gareth Mills really on the offensive here versus Bow, but Bow trying to make the move done, and he's got it done on the inside into Paddock Hill Bend. And I think Mills not fighting this one too hard because they are in two different classes, as we're hearing that Kurt Van Hoenack has jumped to the pits and Matt Emmons has just left the pits, so he's picked up damage on the car and had to do repair work to the car. We haven't seen the incident, but it has not been a happy day in either race so far for Emmons. As we can see here, is the case that Verlaine come through, and I believe we just had a major incident involving Nigel Stock and Matt Emmons. We're going to see what's happened here, but let's take a look back. We've definitely had something huge happen. So making his way into Paddock Hill Bend, we're looking at Stock right now, the English driver in the Huracan, as he's coming down the hill here. The rear of the car's completely snapped and gone into also. Emmons was not involved in this at all, but we had it that the two of them were involved in instances at roughly the same time. What about Matt Emmons? So as he was making his way out of the pits, having just got the car repaired, I think it's the case that perhaps, well, the car's inch along and does not look very happy. There's something wrong with that car. They did not get that repaired very well. And then, no, he cannot go moving at all right now. So Emmons out of this one by the looks of things very early on, as it does appear that Stock is as well. As we come back to your live pictures right now, and we can see our race leader going on to lap number 5. But meanwhile, further behind, we've got Rasmussen versus Bow. Bow, of course, in the pro category. Rasmussen in the amateur category. Won't want to fight this too much, as we see it behind them. Mills being passed here by Verlaine. But Verlaine looks at, oh, goodness me, there's contact between the two of them. Mills is into the wall, and Verlaine has gone charging off into the gravel at Paddock Hill Bend. Just the tiniest bit of contact there, and I do not think that needed to happen, but both drivers on the receiving end of a significant shunt, and as a result, now they'll fall down the order like stones as we see Verlaine rejoining, just avoiding coming back onto the circuit in time as all of our drivers come through. But my goodness, it has been a very dramatic opener to this feature race. And now coming back to where it's not kicking off, we see Caruana there going wide out of Druid's Bend here on the offensive. He's up to P20 already. That's P12 in terms of the pro class right now, and he's making that charge as rapidly as he can here. But remember, he was saying the same for Bland. They were both saying about that they just wait to stay clear of the drama, and they're doing everything they can right now to do so. As in terms of where is George Bland, well, he is a lap down. He's been involved in an instant earlier on in this race, but we see now Caruana going around the outside here of Debova, and as he does so, sweeping around the outside of Jeremy Debova there, he takes the move through Hawthorns up into P19, and he's now got the two amateurs, Jochen Seeger and then Navarro Debova ahead of him, that he'll need to clear rapidly as they make the way down. We've got a car spun out there in what is coming out of Westfield Bend, and we'll find out who that is shortly for you, ladies and gentlemen. It is a case that somebody has really lost it through Westfield Bend coming down the hill, and we've got another car. That's Dirk Bounce off the circuit. What's happened to Dirk Bounce? Well, the rear end just completely snapped, and then this is Herriman's coming through as the cameraman was focused more on Herriman's, but we can see Bounce there having a disaster of a run here, and now Caruana gaining a couple more places as a result of this, but a lot of drivers just seemingly not able to keep it together, Brands Hatch, and we're not even 10 minutes into this race, we're not even a sixth in, and already we have seen a lot of drama, as meanwhile in the battle for P2, Verschaft on the inside here versus Prouting, the pro going up the inside versus the amateur, and Prouting just simply letting the pros through. I think he doesn't need to fight this, he just needs to hold on to his momentum right now, because he does have a 2.5 second gap, does Prouting, in the BMW in the middle of this pack that we focus on now. He has got a 2.5 second gap to Rasmussen, who's our P2 driver in the amateur class. So you can see in the rear of your camera shot there the Switchback Motorsport machine as they make their way through Westfield Bend now and up towards Sheen Curve. But as they make their way through it for Prouting, he just needs to focus on holding onto that lead, as we do see there Bow just going a little bit wide out of Sheen, but not too wide as to start to lose control of the car. But you can see Bow really pushing hard here, despite the fact he's not battling with Prouting. He wants to put that pressure on Prouting to get the move done as soon as possible here, and he knows, I think, that there's a chance of him hunting down Verschaft and even Melvin for the win, as we are getting some smoke starting to appear down towards the pit lane right now. But as they make their way, charging way through here, I do think it's going to be Bow's going to come up the inside into paddock. He's going from quite far back here. Will Prouting see it? Prouting does, and he gives the space, but Bow doesn't have the momentum, and he's not being able to get it done. As meanwhile, Dasunik right now battling with Baker. Baker in the Ferrari, Dasunik in the Porsche. Baker going for the cutback here, but remember they're in two different classes as well, as we see Baker battling on the inside here. He's not letting the pro have it easy here as they make their way out. Druids are now down towards where's Graham Hill Bend at turn 3. You can see Baker finally releasing the position, or does he, as the cutback emerges, and this is where Dasunik may be a little bit vulnerable. But keep in mind, Oystein Hereford is catching up to these guys right now, and Baker decides not to push this one as more, as we hear that Prouting has had an off there in coming out to Surtees, and this is really going to upset the apple cart for Prouting, as we see Baker comes through to take P4 in the amateur class. He takes P8 right now, and let's take a look back very shortly at what happened. But before we do, Prouting just being passed, or no, Hereford backs out of it here. He realises that after the incident that he was involved in into Hawthorns previously, he doesn't need to do anything, but look who's come through like a bullet there, and I believe that was Billy Fletcher, capitalising on the fact that Oystein Hereford lost so much momentum through Hawthorns, and he just simply said, okay, well, if you're not going to take the place, I will. Thank you very much. And Fletcher almost losing it there on the exit of Sheen, and this shows you how fast Fletcher's pushing right now. Fletcher literally driving on the limits here, because he knows he can hunt down that win. He's not far for the lead group right now. He's the best part of about 10 seconds off the leaders, and in terms of his lap times, that last lap of 22.21, the fastest lap of anybody, he is outpacing the leaders right now by a couple of attempts a lap, and he is pushing as hard as he possibly can in order to catch up to them. As we hear, Jeremy Debova has had an incident that's dropping him down the order, but Oystein Hereford not able to close up. But we go from that to seeing right now, it's the case that Fletcher trying to find his way past Prouting, but remember they got Mark Baker ahead of them, and Baker will not want to let Prouting get ahead of it, and Fletcher's got to find an inventive way to get through as we ride on board and look back from the gearbox of Mark Baker here. And as they come charging up towards what is Surtees for another time of asking, you can see here it's the face that Prouting trying to find a way through, but using the Ferrari's performances Baker to hold off the BMW M4 behind him, and you can see the Huracan looming rather menacingly behind Prouting. That's Fletcher, of course, trying to find a way through, and Fletcher's going to go for it here as Baker goes a little bit deep into Hawthorne's corner here, and these two simply holding up the charging pros, but of course they don't have to give way. They can choose whether they want to give way or not, but this is a very intricate battle between Baker and Prouting, because if Baker's able to hold this position and Prouting comes under that pressure from the pros and they force a move. Then Baker can get some distance and try to pull away. But as we look back to the exterior cameras right now, you can see Prouting definitely gaining a lot of momentum here as they come charging down clearways towards what is Clark Curve. And as they make the way in here, you can see Fletcher coming through on the inside here. Fletcher deciding, right, enough's enough. I'm going to get the place. And look, there's the queue starting for. And that's Ben Faines at the back of this pack now in the Porsche 911. And you can see Prouting having a poor run out of what was the final corner. And now Austin Hereford's going to go to the inside versus Prouting. Prouting finds himself in a very uncomfortable position here. He's got three pros who are battling one another and trying to use him as both a shield and attacking armament as they make the way up into Druids right now. And Prouting goes defensive into Druids here. As you can see, Hereford's trying to go around the outside. Faines comes up the inside to outside now to Graham Hill Bend. So Hereford has to go defensive into Graham Hill Bend here. And they're all fighting over the position of Prouting. But you can see Fletcher right now. He's got the momentum on Baker and he's going to go up the inside of Baker into Surtees' corner here. And in doing so, we can see that Baker now under pressure from what is Prouting as Prouting drag races Baker down the Pilgrim Shop down towards Hawthorns here. This is a really odd dynamic emerging as they make their way up the hill here into the right-hander of Hawthorns. They go 2 by 2 effectively, and you see Hereford trying to hold off Faines, but behind them Prouting has been back passed by what is Baker, and as they come through here we can see that Austin Hereford is holding on for the time being as we run on board with Ben Faines here, but it's not going to be long I think before we see one of them start to just push it a little too hard. As we see Prouting has had enough. He's had enough there at Sheen Cove. He's kept it together out of that, and Baker has retained the position, and it was getting to a point where it was going to end up with one of them potentially pushing a little too hard as we now see Hereford close up to the back of Baker once again here. As we see off there, that is, I believe that's Kregel who's had a run off there out of the corner, unless I'm very much mistaken. That was Argent Kregel. And as they make their way onto another lap here, you can see Faines going for the move up the inside. We look to the exteriors right now. He's sent it on the inside there. And can Hereford respond? It's going to be very close as Hereford went for the comeback, but Faines goes defensive to the inside into Druids here. These two battling for P10 overall, but this is effectively P6 in the pro class right now. And the debutant versus the more experienced driver here as they make their way through Graham Hill Bend. And as they come through, you can see that as they come in towards Surtees now, it's the case that Faines is going to try and get the move on Baker as soon as possible. He wants to put Baker between himself and Hereford. He feels that pressure from the BMW driver, and the Porsche driver wants to get done. But look at this, Baker having a run off there, trying to stay out of the way. But look at Hereford tucked in so close behind Faines, and Baker is still there. This is such an awkward dynamic for Faines right now because he wants to get clear of Baker, but Baker is proving to be a cork in the bottle for these guys, and Prouting is catching back up right now. And I appreciate there's other battles happening around on the circuit, but this is what happens when you have two classes with drivers battling within each class, and they're battling between classes as well, and it erupts like this because they're all legitimately allowed to race one another and they will not let one another go right now. And Baker, I think, just does not want to yield because he's worried about Prouting getting close enough to make a resurgent attack. As you can see, Nat Caruana now in the rear of your picture is caught up to these guys. He's in P13, and as a result, Caruana really coming on strong here as we take a look into the chat with you guys and girls. But before we do, we come, oh goodness me, the Delta Motorsport driver there coming out of the pit and right onto the warpath of what was Faines and also Hereford there, and they all had to back out, and the reactions of those drivers, that was Jean-Louis Deschamps coming out of the pits there, which he's allowed to do, and that is the pit lane thing with regards to Brands Hatch that emerges straight onto Paddock Hill Bend, and how they did not have an incident there is a testament to their ability as sim racing drivers here. As you can see, they make their way up the hill right now, and it is the case they go into the Surtees corner. That was absolutely hair-raising stuff. And, well, my goodness me, and if we take a look back at that, just watch this, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it's going to be waiting for Jean-Louis Deschamps to leave the pits. So he leaves the pits, right? This is the Delta Motorsport driver who's just left. Watch this. He emerges. He's within his limits, of course. But there's Ben Faines, who literally has to snap the car out of the way of Deschamps. Otherwise, he would have gone straight for the back of Deschamps. And Caruana there tries to squeeze through versus Prouting, and Deschamps in all of this. And in the end, he does find his way through. That is phenomenal from all of them. My good grief, that was absolutely something else as they make their way now through Sterling's corner, and we look a little bit further up front and we can see Dasunik right now closing up to the back of Matthew Addy. Addy, of course, in what is P5 as it currently stands here, and you see Addy in the black and green Ferrari. Behind him you have got Dasunik there in the white and orange Porsche with the Pro classification on it on the windshield as they make their way out of Paddock Hill Bend and up towards Druids. I think there will be a pass on in the near future. We will wait and see how it plays out. But meanwhile, a bit further down the field, we can see Ed Lack here in the Lamborghini, of course, the CXR Project Black Machine, chasing after what is Patak there. Patak with the mangled rear wing for that contact on the parade lap, or the warm-up lap, if you will, where he had the contact from what was Bao behind him, Pin Bao, as they make their way down through Paddock Hill Bend. You can see Patak really struggling with the car, as meanwhile, Addy here is being passed, I believe, by Desunit, but you can see Fletcher all over the back of these guys as well, and Addy battling with the pros here. Of course, the amateur driver doesn't have to battle if he does not want to. I think Fletcher here will look for a move into Westfield. No, he's too far back to go for it. As we see, meanwhile, Ben Faines here in P9. He has got past Mark Baker in the end, and now we've got the trainer cars behind Mark Baker as we ride on board the gearbox with Baker, and that's Matt Caruana. He's got a face full of the Huracan driver right now, the charging bull in the pro class, as they make their way through with Sheen Curve, and Baker goes a little bit deep there, and he has to settle the car. Hereford goes around the outside. Prouting tries to also use this as a chance, but Baker puts it back on the throttle here, and as they make their way down towards what is Clark Curve, you can see into the right hander they go, and it is Prouting who retakes the position, or does he? He hasn't had the momentum here. We've also got Hermans and Hicks trying to come through, two more pros. They go three wide across the start finish straight here, and as they come up into Paddock Hill Bend, you can see how all four drivers are trying to find the way. We've also got a Hicks in there as well. This is getting absolutely tight as they make the way up in towards Druids, and you can see now it's the case that Herman's holding off Prouting, but look at this, Hicks coming past Jockins, well, Hicks trying to get into this as well as they make their way down their hill, and as they come through here, I think that's Johnny Deschamps in the mix as well, who is a lap down, so he's not technically permitted to fight these guys, even though maybe he's a little bit faster, he would argue. He's got blue flags waving at him, but this is getting very tough to navigate, and Brands Hatch definitely proving to live up to its reputation of being a very twisty and narrow circuit as they make their way and now down towards Hawthorns once again. Now, meanwhile, further back, I can tell you that Mikael Andreasen is continuing his charge through the field right now after what has been a rather up and down start, in the fact that he's currently P21, or that's the equivalent of P9 in the amateur class. He's chasing after Ollie Wayne right now. These two have raced one another a good amount of times over the course of the season, both of them dating all the way back, in fact, to the opening round back at Daytona. But as they make their way through the right-hander right now of what is Hawthorne's corner, you can see that Wayne just seemingly holding on for the time being as they make their way through the right-hander here of Westfield. Now, as they do so, of course, Andreasen will be focusing on the fact that he's trying to attack Wayne, but he's also got Andrew Lovesey behind him, and he won't want Lovesey, the pro driver, to really force the move on the inside. He'll want Lovesey to come through at the right time and then get into the rearview mirror of Wayne and perhaps use that as a means of gaining or getting the move on Wayne. As we can see there, Lovesey just coming out the slipstream, I think, trying to send the message through to Andreasen, look, I'm behind you. In fact, no, it's the case that Lovesey into the pits here for his scheduled stop, and we do think that a lot of drivers may decide to go much earlier in the pit stops than what we normally see, for the simple reason that they are able to perhaps use it as an undercut. But we can see Desunit here versus Fletcher, and Desunit really catching up to the back of Fletcher. I think it's the case that Fletcher has previously passed Desunit, and that happened earlier on. Let's take a look back. So this was only moments ago on the same night, and it was the case going up into Surtees corner here. Fletcher sending it on the inside. The Luxem 24 driver just simply creeping in there and getting the move done, and that's why they were so close in the run towards Hawthorns. But you can see that gap is now starting to creak open little by little, corner by corner, as they make their way through the left-hander of Sterling's. Meanwhile, further back, I can tell you that as it currently stands, Mark Baker is behind Prouting now, with all things said and done. But Prouting going a bit wide out of Sheen Curve, and we can see it is the case that as Baker tries to close up, we've got Arjan Backer there making his way in behind as well. We've got the three amateur drivers all coming together, and Prouting going defensive here versus Baker into Clark Curve as they come through, and Baker there having to be wary of the fact that he's, in fact, that's Deschamps behind. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. That is Jean-Louis Deschamps, who is a lap down these guys, who's trying to unlap himself as they make their way into what is turn number one. And even further back, we can see Ben Faines here versus what is Arjan Backer, and Backer not fights, of course, because he is in the amateur class, versus the pro driver of Faines as he makes his way up the hill into Druids. Then if we look a little bit further back, we can see here in the battle, the amateur class there, all three of them are in the amateur class. We've got Ollie Wayne on the inside of Patak here. Patak, of course, with the very heavily damaged Audi R8 from the start, really, and he's been racing with a damaged car. He's trying to hold on versus the drivers around him, but you can see Wayne getting the move done there into Paddock Hill Bend up to P18. That's P7 in the amateur class right now, and we can see Andreasen behind him, just simply tucked in and waiting for that opportunity versus his fellow countrymen. Of course, for Mikel right now, it's going to be one of the situations he'll want to get the move done as soon as possible. when he goes for it into Surtees here, and I think Batak's not offering a major defense here. I think he recognises the fact with his car being in the state it's in right now, he does not need to try and fight these ones. He just needs to keep it smart and sensible and try and nurse the car to its pit window. As we look back up towards our leaders right now, we can see in the battle for the lead in the amateur class, this is Stefan Rasmussen versus what is Matthew Addy. Addy in the Ferrari there, and at the rear of, also the middle rear of your picture, you've got Rasmussen, the BMW M4, and these guys looking to go to toe. And we can see Caruana there in P7 behind as Billy Fletcher is into the pit after I think having a brief off only earlier on in the lap. But as we look at these guys right now making their way through, we in fact right on board with the BMW driver here of Rasmussen. Now, what can Stefan do in order to try and get past that? He seems to get close and then fall back a little bit as he gets closer and closer to that dirt here. We've got Matt Caruana coming through as well. I think for Rasmussen, he'll want to let Caruana come charging through when he can. And we can see here, it's the fact that he's letting Caruana through. He's taking that wide line through Surtees' corner here. He wants Caruana to pull him up to the leader in the amateur class right now. And will Addy respond to this? Will he find a way to inventively let Caruana through, and that way essentially neutralise the gap gain and not make sure that it's the case that Rasmussen is able to close up? Because the gap between the two of them now is up to 2 seconds based on Rasmussen going a little bit wide into what was their Surtees' corner in order to let Caruana through. Will it be the case that he's able to close it back up under the overtake? But meanwhile, we look a little bit further down the order once again here, and we can see Ed Lack chasing after what is Jeremy Debova. Debova in the Porsche 911, of course, Lack in the Lamborghini Huracan here as they make their way through Hawthorns for what is to them the 16th time of asking as they come through the right-hander. A third of the race complete right now. It is one of those situations where for Jeremy Debova, I think he's just trying to focus on keeping it together. As we are here, and we've got some changes up front as we have Harry Melvin, who was in the pits very briefly, although we will come back to who's leading the race overall very shortly. But you can see Ed Lack closing up to Jeremy Debova here. He looks for it potentially into Clark Curve. Can he find it? No, he cannot find it. And as they make their way through the right-hander here, it's the case they stay as they were over the course of the lap. Going on to lap number 17 for these guys as they cross that timeline. But meanwhile, up front, we can see it's still Harry Melvin leading right now by a considerable margin over Pimbo behind 3.5 seconds as he makes his way through the right-hander there of Westfield Bend. We've got a car off there, and that looks to be, I think that's Knocker, that's Jürgen Knocker off the circuit. And as they make their way through here, it's the case that he rejoins the racing behind them all. And see, Alexander Batak has come into the pit, so he's decided he's had enough. I'm looking out my commentary box window. Batak, with the very heavily damaged R8 from Switchback Motorsport, has pitted. Is now leaving the pits as well, so he's done a quick stop. But meanwhile, it's the case that for Austin Hereford right now, he's closing up to the back here of what is Rasmussen. And Rasmussen, remember, well, it was the case that Rasmussen was able to try and close up to the back of Addy, but in fact, it's the case he's losing out massively here with the passes being made by the Pro Drives. The gap between Rasmussen and Addy now almost up to 3.5 to 4 seconds. So Addy really getting a move. And to give you an idea where Addy is, he's just making his way onto that start-finish straight, whereas as the case Rasmussen was only coming up into Clark Curve. And that picture defines right now how much time Rasmussen has lost with the passes from the Pro Drivers. You see Addy just soldiering on right now and keeping it together. Meanwhile, we've got Ben Faines here battling with Mark Baker. He will want to clear Baker as quickly as possible here, having seen what happened early on and been right in the thick of it. He doesn't make the move. And then behind them, you've got Jean-Louis Deschamps in P31, who's a lap down, trying to also come through past these guys as rapidly as possible here as they make their way through Druridge Bend. Of course, it's a bit more of a prickly situation for Deschamps. And then we look a little bit further back into what is outside of the top 20. And we've got Navarro Debova here. And we've got quite a battle building, in fact, although we've got some of our leaders coming through, and that's why drivers are having to move out of the way or are being passed at this point in time. But Navarro Debova, after a very difficult start to this race, now starting to come back into it. He's P27, P13 in the amateur class, it should be pointed out. And he is chasing down Jürgen Knocker, who's just ahead in the blue-white. Oh, goodness me, and that's Reece Young spun on the apex there of what is Sterling's corner. We'll take a look back shortly at what's happened there, but just ahead, that's Alexander Batak in the now recovered Audi R8. He's dropped all the way down to P24, so we are getting some changes with the pit stops right now as Jürgen Knocker is into the pits. So that is going to provoke both Navarro Debova and Alexander Batak up as they make their way onto another lap. But let's see what happened to Reece Young those moments ago. De Jong, as he made his way then into the right-hander of what was Sheen Curve, looked rather composed, bit up into Sterling as he's gone onto the grass. The rear right tyre has just simply gone into the grass, and he's gone into a bit of a tailspin there, and you can see everybody having to come through very carefully or just simply scythe their way around him. And very good evasive work from our drivers, and also patience from Rhys Young not to try and get on the throttle to get the car off the circuit with everybody coming through. And it is a major learning experience for some drivers here, with so many drivers out on circuit right now. But we look back around the field and we can see that the field is starting to open up somewhat, although I say that Tony Verschaft is on the offensive right now, and he is chasing after Rasmussen. And of course these drivers have yet to pit. As soon as we get those pit stops, we will let you know about them, because they could have a huge factor on how this race plays out. Now, checking out in with you guys and girls in the chat there, we can see, unfortunately for Deegan87, once again, it's a case of continuing to experience that error code. I'm very sorry to hear that, Deegan, but thank you for wishing good luck to everyone. And we hope to have you back next week. We can see Mikkel Mueller there saying go Stefan, so he's cheering on Rasmussen. Of course, Rasmussen just up the road here in the Switchback Motorsport machine, currently running P7 overall and P2 in the amateur class. And as we look a little bit further back, we can see Kenny Herman's now starting to inch ever closer to the back of Tony Verschaft here, both of them in that pro category battling for P8, or what is in the pro category P6 in their situation. But as they make their way down towards what is Clark Curve here, you can see that Herman's holding on for the time being as Caruana sits the fastest lap of the race at 21.970, and Verschaft into the pits, releasing Herman's upper position here. And Caruana right now is flying as we look at the Huracan driver. To give you an idea, that is Desunik just ahead of him right now, whereas Caruana set a 21.97 on that previous lap. Our race leader Harry Melvin at 23.53, Desunik at 23.27, Pimbao at 22.51. So Caruana right now is at least half a second, if not in excess of a second faster than most drivers out on circuit. This is phenomenal stuff from Caruana. He has cleared all the traffic with all the major incidents in this race, and he is now finding his way up through that order as rapidly as he possibly can here. He's up into that P4 position, and we've got a car of there. That's George Bland off into the gravel at Westfield Bend. Now, what has happened to Bland, you ask? Let's find out. So he's making his way through it. It already looks as though it's a very heavily damaged car, and he moved out of the way. Something has gone very wrong for the M&V Esports driver. That car does not look at all happy, and Bland having a disaster of a race. And you can see he's trying to bring the car back on circuit. He's keeping it on the grass right now. I think that could be a retired car very soon, because it does not look very well, that McLaren, as we come back to looking at what is the situation for P3. Well, in fact, we were going to say it's a situation, but he's already passed. Desunik has Caruana. Now, where is Desunik in all this? Well, he's just making his way onto what is the start-finish straight, and now heading into the right-hander of turn 1. He's got damage to the car. What happened to Desunik? So this was moments ago, and he went wide out of Sheen Curve and into the wall for Desunik. My goodness, and that is quite a hit, and that will be damage to the engine and also the front suspension of the car. Well, in fact, not to the engine per se, because it's in the rear of the car in the case of the Porsche. Unless he's hit the rear of the car, but definitely to the front suspension and the aero package, and that is why we saw such a gap open up. We were wondering what had happened there, but it's just the case of Desunik getting it wrong through what was Sheen Curve. Sheen claiming that a lot of drivers here tonight, and now we see Øystein Herford closing up to the Porsche driver as he continues to go racing for Team Racing Netherlands here, but you can see Herford all over the back right now. He's going to go for it into what is into Hawthorne's corner here, but he's not able to do it. Desunik holds the line for the time being, but I wonder whether this is just a fortuitous attempt and it's not going to hold on for too long. It'll be a formality that Hereford finds his way through in short order, as Rasmussen has just been passed by Kenny Hermans for P6, but remember they're in two different classes. Rasmussen, our lead amateur driver, Hermans P6 overall and P6 in the pro category as we currently stand. I can see right now it's the case that Desunik under increasing pressure with that damaged Porsche versus the healthy Hereford Mobile, the BMW M4, as they make their way for the right-hander here, and there's no change at this point in time, but Hereford's got the momentum here, and as they make their way into the start-finish straight, going on to what is lap 22, it is the case that Øystein Herford gets the move on the inside and simply moves up to P4 here. I don't think Desunik had any response in the end with the damage he's weathering, and as a result, as they now make their way towards Druids, it's now a case for Hereford to try and hunt down the top three. Starting with Matt Caruana, who in himself is chasing down Pimbo and also Harry Melvin. But looking a bit further down the order right now, we can see we have got, by looks of things, Chris Keenan here, down in P28. He's chasing after Kriggle, Arjan Kriggle just ahead, who is the best part of a second up. And behind him, we've got Gareth Mills, who's starting to really come back into this race after everything that has happened. And you can see Mills there in the GM machine as they make their way there for the final corner. And Mills getting very close to the back of Keenan's car there and almost hitting the rivet. And I think Mills has had to lift out somewhat as they drag race their line. This is the battle for P28 right now, or in terms of their class P14 in the amateur class, and Mills gets it done there, but Keenan I think might have flat spotted the tyre for running so deep and then picking up a little bit of that heavy wear where he's had to try and stop the car before it's run off the circuit. As Dasunik has come into the pits, it should be pointed out, and all of our drivers continue around the circuit right now. Half the race to go, but it has been definitely a very dramatic race at Brands Hatch in the feature right now, as we see Billy Fletcher meanwhile in P10 in the Pro category, P14 overall, chasing down Jeremy DeBova here, getting very close to the back of DeBova is Fletcher as they make their way through Westfield Bend here. And I should point out to you that Fletcher has already made his pit stop, whereas DeBova has not. He's one of the first pro drivers in the top 22 pit, Fletcher, as they make their way through the left-hander here of Sterling's. He's trying to put that pressure on. Can he find a way through as we ride on board here with Britain charging after what is the Dutchman as they make their way through the right-hander and now across towards that timeline once again. Now, as they come along here, will he look for the move into turn one? He's got a lot of momentum here, Fletcher. Is he going to try and squeeze it? He's going to go for it on the brakes. And DeBova's going to try and hang to the outside and look for the potential cut back up into Druids. But in the end, Fletcher's able to stop the car in time and hold it defensively here up into Druids. I think Fletcher has nailed it on. And as a result, he's up into that P10 position as they make their way down towards Grand Hill Bend. Behind them, however, you can see that Jochen Seeger, and I believe that is also Navarro DeBova in the rear view picture there, as Jochen Seeger a lap ahead of Navarro DeBova in that P12 position right now, and Seeger having that disastrous race number one in the sprint race, but right now P4 in the amateur class, P12 overall in the sorry, I should say P13 overall, as our time screen gets updated there in the amateur class, and as a result doing a very good job. He has got a gap of what is 2.6 seconds to Ollie Wayne behind. We can see the Mercedes driver in the rear view camera shot there, and in terms of the next driver up the road, well, we can see Fletcher versus DeBova here. They're continuing to fight, and it is the case that DeBova is still behind Fletcher. As we look back to that right now, it's the case that the more senior member of the DeBova family not letting our championship leader in the pro category have it all his own way as they go up into Sterling's corner here. The McChallenge but DB machine fighting on versus Luxem 24, but I think losing some of the ground now. As we check in with you guys and girls in the chat, and what we can see here is the case that Matt Evans, well, that wasn't fun either. Very unfortunate, Matt, and I believe you're one of our early drivers who had the hit to the pits, and we have lost a lot of drivers. It should be pointed out, ladies and gentlemen, I believe it is the case we've only got 30 drivers remaining. We have lost 8 drivers in the first half of the race right now, and that order of drivers is Jean-Louis Deschamps. We have also lost what is George Bland, Dirt Bounce, Matt Emmons, Rick Jansen, Nigel Stott, Kurt Van Hoenacker and Tom Porter. Brands Hatch has been ruthless in the way it has treated our drivers tonight, as we see DDD Vlamink here chasing after Andrew Lovesey. These two battling for position in the pro category, and overall as well, they're battling for P20 out on the circuit and what is P13 in that pro category as they come through. Ed Lack, I believe, and Arjan Backer into the pits, unless I'm very much mistaken right now, but I think it's the case that Lack has come out of the pit lane a bit further up the road as they make their way around, although we will double check that for you as soon as we possibly can. Of course, our time screens will need some updating as Carolina sets an even faster lap. Oh goodness me, it is the case there. Lovesey getting it wrong on the Druids Bend, and as a result now Vlamink gains the position, and look at this, Sunik trying to find a way through. He's going to go from the inside with the repaired Porsche here, and Sunik gains the place as well. What happened to Lovesey? Was he making his way up towards the hill here? Didn't look as though there was any contact from the camera angle that we did have. Did he simply get it wrong on the brakes here? No, there was contact, in fact, my apologies, and it was the case that the Vlamink just simply tapping the inside and then driving off, and I think Lovesey is going to be very angry, and I think the England Motorsport team are going to be protesting that one to the stewards quite early on, because that was some clear contact there, and Lovesey now continues racing, but there will be most likely a flat spot on that rear right-hand tyre with the way it skidded, as we see there behind now, you've got Matt Caruana, who's flashing his lights to come through, and Caruana all over the back as Lovesey moves out of the way there, and Caruana, you can see the attitude attitude of that Huracan. He knows that this win is possible right now. He is 12, well, almost 13 seconds off of our race leader, and he is hunting it down lap on lap. His last lap was a 21.88, and to give you an idea, compared to our leaders right now, it's the case that Pinball is lapping at 22.4s, whereas Harry Melvin lapping on 23.2s. Caruana is absolutely going for it here. None of our top three have pitted either, so for this situation right now, if Caruana can keep up this pace, there is no reason come the final 10 minutes he will be within striking distance. Assuming they all have equal pit stops, he will be in striking distance of the guys in front of him as he continues to cut into their race lead lap after lap. But meanwhile, as we look a little bit further down, we're still getting some more changes in our order. We can see Jochen Seeger has just been passed by Jeremy De Bover here. A class change as behind. You've got Ollie Wayne there, who is, I believe that's behind. That's Navarro De Bover, who is a lap down. Wayne, of course, in that P14 position, chasing after Jochen Seeger here, continues to do so. As we have just heard, there's been a bit of an incident further down the circuit, and into the pits comes Osterhuis as he makes his way in here. Morton does, and he's just coming into the pits, I think, to get his scheduled stop out the way, or in fact he's making his way all the way through the pits right now, so I'm wondering if that might be a drive-through penalty of some description. We'll try and find out for you, but he's dropped all the way down the order. That did not appear to be a scheduled stop, unless I'm very much mistaken right now. In fact, it might have been a scheduled stop. We'll wait for clarity in our ear from the trackside stewards, as we can see here that we have got Harry Melvin just continuing to lead right now. But look in the rear of your picture, you can see that Audi R8. That is Pinball right now chasing after leader. But he has got Mark Baker between him, and he makes his way past Mark Baker, who is a lap down now compared to our P2 man, and he is hunting down Harry Melvin. And then we've got a further 9.5 seconds back to Caruana, as meanwhile Ben Faines is hunting down Kenny Hermans here in the battle for P5 overall. 24 minutes to go, or a little bit less right now, and we ride on board with Ben Faines here as he makes his way in the hump for that P5. Hermans trying to hold on right now, and of course for Hermans it'll be a little bit of an unknown. Will Faines go for the move into Paddock Hill then? No, he waits for the opportunity. He's trying to sight Hermans into a mistake through Paddock Hill. It's not going to happen. Hermans is too resilient for that, but as they make their way up into Druids. Now what can Faines do to find a way through? Well, he can get Hermans to go a little bit deep on the brakes, and Hermans has locked up the brakes to some extent, but he's kept the car together right now, and the Belgian not able to capitalise here as they make their way through the left hand of Graham Hill Bend, and now come out down towards turn number 4. In towards 30s they come here, and it's looking as though Faines are looking very strong in his competitive race here as they make their way through. But you can see it's the case that Herman's just chopping the nose off there before Faines can get his nose alongside, and it's the case as they now make their way down through Pilgrim's Drop up towards Hawthorns for what is for them the 27th time of asking. It is one of the situations right now where Faines has got to be inventive here. He knows that Hermans is really starting to feel that pressure. He's made a couple of mistakes here, but how can he find his way in? Can he get a door open as they make their way through? And it's the case that Faines just runs a little bit wide there. He'll have to be careful of those track limits, of course, as they make their way through the right-hander Sheen curve right now. And as they come through and in towards Sterling's Bend, he's still in that position for the time being, not able to find a way through right now as he gets it a little bit wrong out to Sterling and falls further back. But we'll keep our eyes on these guys, of course, as meanwhile we look a little bit further down the order and we can see in P11 right now, P3 in the amateur class, it is Matthew Proutin here putting in a solid performance in this feature race. He has just been passed by Billy Fletcher, who is trying to make his way up through the order, and we can see Fletcher just ahead right now, soldiering on. And it's the case with Fletcher having taken his, I believe he took his pit stop a little bit earlier on in this race. It is the case that now for Fletcher he can try to hunt down the leaders, but he's got some way to go to do so. Of course, it's a long way up the road for the Luxim 24 driver as he continues to charge around the British circuit. But meanwhile, Edward Lack closing up to the back here of Rasmussen. Of course, the pro driver wants to get clear of the amateur driver as soon as he possibly can as they make their way through and down towards the left-hander here. Of course, Graham Hill Bend. And I'm hearing up front that it's the case that no, it's not been a change of position. The timing screens do tell fibs there, but we can see Bow definitely continuing to close down the gap to Melbourne as we're hearing that Rasmussen has given the place to Lack. And now as they make their way around, we are getting some changes on our board here as our board is continuing to be updated, but it is the case that right now our two leaders closing together, and we can see Caruana also coming through just in the rear of the camera shot there and trying to close up at a rapid rate of knots. But Jeremy De Bover has come into the pits, and meanwhile, one battle that is really starting to build up right now, you can see at the front of your camera there, that is Ben Hicks, and then at the rear of it is Tony Verschaft. And it's the case the Team Racing Netherlands driver right now inching ever closer to the back of Hicks as they make their way through the right-hander here of Hawthorns. 20 minutes to go right now. We've got Navarro de Bova there having to recover an errant Porsche as it came out of Hawthorne's corner. He kept it out of the way of the drivers coming through and now brings it back online. A little bit of a love tap there. And it's the case for Schaff looking for the move on the inside into Sheen versus Hicks. He gets the move, but will Hicks come back in there? I do wonder whether that tiny little love tap just opened the door. It was the smallest of contacts there. And as they make their way down to clearways and towards Clark Curve once again, you can see Hicks just falling back a little bit now. Perhaps biding his time, perhaps waiting for that all-important pit stop as they make their way through. But I think both of these guys have already pitted, so in fact there will be no more pit stops for these drivers. They will be just racing to the end as Rasmussen has now coming out of the pits, having pitted and dropped all the way down to P14 as it currently stands, and Matthew Addy gets ahead of him. Now, it should be pointed out that Matthew Addy and Rasmussen were close together earlier on in the race. They both have pitted. Addy had that much earlier pit stop, and he's gained as a result of it. He's actually come back out ahead of Rasmussen by 1.2 seconds right now. This is the battle for what is P4 in the amateur class, P14 overall on circuit. But if we put the strategic element in right now, we've got Ollie Wayne, Matthew Prouting, and also Arjan Bakker, who are ahead of these guys in the amateur class, and they have yet to pit. As we hear that Didi De Vlaming has had a major incident, has jumped to the pits. What has happened to De Vlaming? Well, as he's making his way here into Clark Curve, coming in towards the pits here, as he just simply come into pits. No, the car's gone wide, and the rear left tyre's lost grip and into the wall, and that is very unfortunate for Vlaming. Oh, and goodness me, and you can see it, they're trying to take evasive action, as Vlaming's car just did not settle, and it was Seeger who's knocked into the wall there. Oh my goodness me, and for Seeger, that is going to be a huge blow after all the time he has gained, and it is now the situation whereby he's got it all to do again, and Seeger was making ground, but he's now dropped all the way down to P21 overall. As we see Rishung has gone wide there out of what is Sterling's corner at turn at number 8. We also had a car parked up on what was the run out of Westfield through Dingledale. As we can see, Arjan Bakker is into the pits, and I believe Addy and Rasmussen are going to gain the places of Bakker right now. As you can see, they're coming across that timeline, so Bakker will come out behind these guys. As we see Andreasen also into the pits, so it is the situation right now where Addy really, we expect, is our leader in the amateur class. Can he hold off the fast charging Rasmussen behind him in the remaining 18.5 minutes? That is the big challenge for him, as meanwhile Kenny Herriman's up ahead in P6 is hunting down Ben Faines right now. Faines trying to do everything he can to hold on for the time being. And remember, for these guys, they have yet to pit, as has Oystein Hereford. Although Hereford, I say that, is now into the pits here. And we've got Ben Faines, who's now charging through. But the big question will be for Billy Fletcher right now. To give you an idea, here's the camera on him. He's making his way through Sheen Curve and now coming down in towards Sterling's. Can he jump ahead as Harry Melvin has taken his pit stop? Matt Caruana has yet to do so. So we are getting that change in our race leaders in the pro category right now. The order is flipping considerably as they make their way around the circuit, and as we take a look back down towards the stewards as it currently stands, it is a situation right now where they're pushing on, and it is the case that for Fletcher doing everything he can to try and hold on to his position at this current time as they roll through to another lap. But Fletcher, well, he's come out, in fact, Fletcher has come out ahead of Hereford. Say that as Hereford who's now come out behind him, and Fletcher definitely charging around the circuit at this current point as they make their way through down toward Graham Hill Bend. And we can see that Melvin versus Herriman's, they're inching ever closer together right now. Remember, these two have, well, it's Harry Melvin who has pitted, Herriman's has not pitted as they come all the way through. Now, as we do check in to what is the chat here, we can see it's the case that coming from words from what is Fish there, is this Next Gen Racing the home of PC and PS4 Sim Racing? It is indeed, Fish, and it's good to see you here. It's good to see you enjoying it from the usual chat. Lucy Evans as well, Go Rishung and the M&V boys. But we also have got word there from you later saying neat that you do other games as well. Was that in GT Sport 4 Hour this weekend? Yeah, fantastic. And waiting for the second heat. Thank you for that, you later. It's really good to hear that you're enjoying the broadcast as we see Herriman's into the pits. And as they make their way in, responding to Matt Evans. Unfortunately, Matt, next time I'd definitely love to have you in the commentary box, but we're going to need to do some technical tweaks to that because otherwise your audio is going to get blended in, I think, to what is the race audio. Although saying that, let's see if we can make it work, Matt. Let's see if we can get you in the commentary box. As we can see here, we've got Faines in the pits right now as well. As they make their way out now, Fanes are coming back out of the pits here, and we can see that it's Caruana who's leading right now, but he has yet to pit. But for Caruana, I think he's going to try and go as late as he possibly can here through Sheen Curve, and as he makes his way around through the right hand here of Sheen, you can imagine for him, he's got a 23.5-second gap to Harry Melvin right now. Now, is that enough to be able to come back out ahead of Melvin? That will be the big question that's expected of him. He's going 45 minutes into this race, and he's into the pits. Right, it's the case. Caruana is reacting now with Melvin having made his stop. Where is he going to come out in relation to this? Well, we can see that Harry Melvin making his way right now through Sheen Curve, but he's got traffic in, and that's Jochen Siegert just ahead of him right now, and that traffic will cost him a little bit of time here as Siegert just moves out the way in the end. Siegert a lap down, remember, so it's the fact that he will have to get off that racing line as they come all the way through the right-hander. And as they come through here, we can see that Caruana is still in his pit box, so Melvin will retake the lead, but Caruana is starting to leave the pits right now. Where's Billy Fletcher? Well, he's making his way down towards what is Clark Curve, so Caruana has just emerged, and look at that gap, 3.6 seconds in the end. That gap has come down massively. Caruana here is on a mission to take that win, and right now, with 15 minutes remaining, Caruana could grab that win. He has got the pace to catch up to Melvin here as they make their way around, and Melvin, of course, will be very, very wary of that, because it's the fact Caruana has just come through the field like a scythe through hay as they make their way around. And meanwhile, further down, we can see that Matthew Addy is now leading the amateur class here with all the pit stops in the amateur class concluded. He has got a driver behind him to over there, and I think, hold on a second, what on earth has happened there? Well, it's the case that Rasmussen has just simply tucked him by. I thought we had a car go surging off the circuit there, but I'm very much mistaken. But we can see they've got Navarro over there in between himself and Addy, and as a result here, Rasmussen will be hoping that Dvorak sees the blue flags very shortly as they come up into what is the right-hander of Druids here, and he's getting ever closer to the back here of Dvorak, and Dvorak moves out the way and then lifts off the throttle, and it is the case now that Addy holding on to that lead for the time being as they come all the way through up towards the left-hander of what is Surtees corner here. And as they come through, Addy's got a 2.1 second gap as they come through the corner. Will he be able to hold on to it for this time as they come charging through up and down towards what is Hawthorne's corner? For them, this is of course the 33rd time of asking. But meanwhile, we can see Ollie Wayne here coming through that left-hander of turn number 4, and we've got him going through Surtees corner, hunting down Mark Baker right now. But whilst this is all going on, of course, we look a little bit further up the field and we can see here Billy Fletcher making his way through Druid's corner. And I think very shortly, as we see Jochen Siegert there is parked up on what is the gravel. And I think for Siegert, it's just a case that that car is out of the race as he's jumped back to the pits here. Jochen Siegert is out of the proceedings. It has not worked out for the German. As we can see, Kenny Herriman makes his way through Druids now, being able to make it through the corner. But what we were about to say before we saw Siegert's car is the fact that I think very shortly we might be able to patch in to Billy Fletcher's car and get a chat to him and how his race has been going so far. He is 11.8 seconds off of Caruana, who in turn is chasing down Harry Melvin right now. Could we see the Luxim 24 drivers get on to that front row, i.e. the top 2 steps to the podium once again? We'll find out shortly, as we can see Ollie Wayne chasing after Mark Baker, still trying to hunt down that top 5 in the amateur class right now. Wayne coming through that field as much as he possibly can. The NXTGEN Racing driver as he comes through the right-hander of Druids and now down towards Graham Hill Bend. 12.5 minutes remaining. Can he get the move on? And then he's only got 2.5 seconds up the road to Arjan Bakker, who's a bit further out as Caruana sits a new fastest lap of the race, a 21.765, an absolutely phenomenal lap, as I'm hearing that Pim Bell has had a bit of an incident coming out of Westfield. What's happened to Pim Bell? In fact, as he came out of Hawthorne's here, does the car snap on him into Westfield? I would imagine that would be the case. It does. The rear end snaps on him, and he's had to get the car back together. But fortunately for him, he's had the space to do so. No drivers coming through there as he's returned. But he's down in P8 right now and a 7.2 second gap to Tony Verschaft in P7 as he makes his way across that timeline. But right now, as he makes his way down towards what is Hawthorne's, it's Fletcher just charging through it. And in terms of his times, to give you an idea, could he catch up to Carolina and Melvin? It's a 22.4 last time around for Fletcher, 21.7 for Carolina, 22.9 for Melvin. So he's not quite going to be there based on his current pace. I think a P3 might be all he can achieve now in this race, unless the race leaders take a lot out of one another over the next couple of laps. But meanwhile, with him making his way through right now, we do look a little bit further down the order. We can see Jeremy DeBova closing up to the back of Sunik right now. Sunik just up the road from him, and then we also have Ollie Wayne continue to try and hunt down Baker as they make their way into the left-hander here of what is Graham Hill Bend, turn number 3. And as they come up towards turn number 4 right now into Surtees corner here, it's the case no gain at this point in time. But I'll tell you who is gaining right now. It's our P2 man of Carolina who is hunting down Melvin. That's Melvin at the front of Ignium Motorsport machine. The 2 Hurricanes going toe-to-toe very shortly. And what can Fletcher do here? What can Melvin do here in order to hold on as we look back from the car of Harry Melvin here riding on board? And we can see he has got a face full of Carolinas. Hurricane coming up behind him here as they make their way down Pilgrim Shot and up towards Hawthorne's corner. Into the right-hander they go. As they come through, you can see it's the case that right now no changes at this point in time, as it looks as though Carolina's not able to go for the move into Westfield, but he is sized up. He's building that pressure up here as they make their way up the hill through Dingledale now in towards Sheen Curve, and into that right-hander they go. No change at the moment. You can imagine that for Melvin right now, there must be a huge amount of pressure going through his mind. He's got to try and think about this one. He's got to manage the track as Mikkel Andreasen moves off the racing line there, and as they come through, it's the case that it's going to be right for Melvin. He comes through as Andreasen clears out the way for both of them here, so it's going to be a continued race on to what is for them lap number 37 as they come across that timeline here, and Carolina has now got to just try and find a way through. He's got 10 minutes to go. Will Melvin prove too much in terms of a defensive wall, or will Carolina prove to be the unstoppable force that just makes his way through the wall in the end as they come through Druids? And that was a mistake from Melvin there as he lost the rear end, but Carolina was not able to capitalise. You can see how hard Melvin's having to drive the car to hold on to that lead as they make the way through. And I believe, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to be joined in the commentary box by Matt Evans very shortly, so we're just going to get Matt in here as we're building up to what is going to be perhaps a fantastic conclusion. Hello Matt, can you hear me?
I can, Paul.
Well, welcome to the commentary box, Matt. What's been your biggest observation so far of the battle for this race win between Melvin and what is Caruana?
Just how quick Caruana is for the age that he is. It's really, really impressive, and it makes people like me that think they're quick double take themselves, so to speak.
Was they're making their way through right now with 8.5 minutes to go. You have to wonder which one of them is going to come out on top, because Melvin's no slouch when it comes to defensive driving. We've seen plenty of masterclass defensive work from him earlier in the season.
Yeah, he's very, very good at putting the car in the right places and making the most out of it. But with them being in equal machinery, it's going to be quite an interesting last 8 minutes.
Oh, definitely. And then further down the field, we have also got a couple of battles being up. Ollie Wayne versus Mark Baker, although it has opened up a little. Well, in fact, my apologies, Baker has already been passed by Wayne. That's happened off camera. I think that might have been a slight mistake from Baker somewhere around the lap. But we've also got Lovesley catching up to the back of the Bova that we've got on screen right now. And, well, it's the case, I think Lovesley trying to find his way back into the top 10 of the pros just before the end.
Yeah, I mean, he missed the sprint race, so he's had to start from the very back for the feature, and to come through, and I can't remember what position he is in the pros at the minute.
Currently P12 in the pros.
Oh, so he's done really well to get through the fit pack safely and not keep his nose out of trouble. And yeah, showing he's got really nice racecraft.
Oh, most definitely. But whilst this is going on, I believe the gap between Melvin and Caruana has come charging down again. In fact, they're just making their way up through Sheen Curve, and Caruana this time looking very close to the back of Melvin as they make their way through Stirling's. I think it could be the case that now the pass is potentially on as they're coming down towards Clearways. What do you think?
I think he's going to attempt it in turn one if he can get the run out of this last corner.
Here they go as they come out the corner then and make their way across that timeline to go on to what is lap number 39. It's a case that Melvin defends the inside, but he weaves back onto the racing line here, feeling that Caruana's not close enough. They come through.
But I think he might be looking a bit further in the distance at the back marker and thinking I might be able to use the back marker to my advantage.
Well, as they come up into Druids this time, will Melvin nail it on the apex? He does. He doesn't lose the rear end this time, but Carolina gets it ever closer. He's looking for it down into Graham Hill, just showing those early signs of a potential cutback attempt, but not able to find it here. It is building up as they go past the back marker of Chris Keenan, and you can see Melvin defending to the inside.
A little bit of a twitch from Melvin on the entry, then on the brakes.
As they come out the acceleration now, and into what is Pilgrim's Drop and all the way down towards Hawthorne. It's going to be a drag race. Carolina goes to the outside. Melvin defends to the inside. They come up into the right hand area of Hawthorne's. Melvin tries to hold on, but Carolina's going to try and swing all the way around. He can't quite get it. They come up into Westfield, and Melvin returns to the racing line here. There's not enough room for 2 Hurricanes to go into 1, and now they come down through Dingledale. And as they come on up here, you can see there's just no way for it. It's not wide enough for the 2 of them right now. And they come down in towards Sterling's. Well, I think it's going to be the case if it's this close once again as they come up towards Paddock Hill. I think your prediction he'll try him into turn 1 will happen this time, surely.
I don't know, actually. I think he might hold off till the hairpin at turn 2. Thinking about watching both the lines, they're very similar. And I don't think Matt will want to risk it.
Well, he's definitely got... It's a case if he can get all the points today, it will close up massively towards Fletcher in the championship. Fletcher, of course, down in P3 right now in this race and still getting some solid points here. But one of the observations as well, do you think Fletcher could get involved in this as they take a lot more time out of one another?
He could well, yes. I mean, what is the 5 minutes left or so? He could do if these 2 keep battling like they are and losing the time, and Billy can do the laps times that he can do. It would make for an interesting last lap battle, I think.
Well, as they both come up towards Surtees once again, we're just going to briefly come away from Melvin. Well, I was going to say we come away, but it looks like Melvin's had a poor run out of Surtees once again here, and Carolina's very close. Melvin literally on that inside line. Carolina forced him to stick to it. He's going to try it again. He's going to try and go all the way round through Hawthorne's. They come, and he's got his nose ahead this time, and they come through into Westfield Bend, and Carolina swept round the outside to take the lead with 4.5 minutes remaining. What about that for a move?
To be honest, that corner, you lose so much rear downforce. It's quite really impressive that these 2 can hold the line, and Carolina to make the pass on the outside of that corner.
Well, to be fair, was Carolina able to make the move? It's not to take away from Melvin. It's been a solid race from up front so far, and to be putting in laps he's doing. I think Melvin could even be trying to come back here round into Paddock Hill Bend. He's looking quite close here.
Yeah, he is. I don't know when he'll make this move though. It all depends on this corner, I think. It looks like he's about to touch his bumper.
Well, as they make their way down the hill here, we do ride on board with Melvin, and as they come up in towards the right-hander of Druids, he's not close enough to go for it here, and Carolina now taking that rather distinctive siphon line into the inside of Druids here, and look at the gap he's opened up there. Carolina just seems to have a command of Druids like no other right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think these 3 have been practicing a lot at this track, because I know myself and a few others, we've all struggled a bit with the setups of the cars, so...
Well, as they start to separate out a little bit, we need to look a little bit further down because we do have a bit of a battle continuing to rage here for what is the podium in the amateur class here, looking at Rasmussen versus Prouting for P11. Rasmussen, of course, in P2 right now. They've let Addy disappear off up the road for the win potentially in amateur class, but we've got Prouting trying to come from the inside of Rasmussen here. These 2 so close together through Cart Curve right now, and it does look as though Prouting into the pits here. Has Prouting run out of fuel?
He could have done, I mean, or it could be a drive-through penalty, depending on the incident points.
Well, he's making his way through right now, and he's coming into a pit box. I think he's run out of fuel.
Quite possibly, or he's picked up a bit of damage.
That does release Rasmussen. I think Rasmussen right now will be absolutely breathing a sigh of relief. The racing gods are on his side here with only 2.5 minutes to go. And it's the case, well, Addy's a long way out the road from 11.2 seconds right now. And Addy has really driven this one to perfection, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, he has. I must admit, I didn't think Prouting had pitted when I looked before, but to be able to go that long, because I mean, when we all race in the AM class and everything, we last about 40-45 minutes on the field, but to last nearly a full hour on it, it's quite impressive.
Most definitely, but that is Prouting's second stop from what we're seeing here. So as a result, unless it's the case that perhaps he had a pit stop earlier just for damage repair, Prouting with that surprise pit stop, and now really I think most of the battles out on circuit have started to space out. We do have Dasunik trying to come through past Wayne here, but of course both of them in the different classes. This being the battle for P13 out there. And Wayne trying to close up to the back of Rasmussen is just a little bit further, up to the back of Backer, I should say, just a little bit further up the road.
Yeah, it's quite difficult, I must admit, when we're all driving and we're the AMs, so to speak, and the pros, because it's really difficult to think, well, if I let you pass, can I latch on and gain a bit of an advantage from it, so to speak?
Yeah, I see your point, and it's the fact it's that tactical game of trying to let drivers through as the white flag does come out and Caruana goes on to the final lap of this race. He'll be doing a 43rd lap here before he sees that checkered flag, and we can see here drivers coming out of the pits, and I think that's Navarro de Bova who's just come out the pit, not Navarro, Jeremy de Bova, my apologies, who's just come out the pit. As we can see that Caruana right now has got a bit more of a gap to Melvin thanks to the traffic that has just come out at the right time for Caruana to give himself some more space to Melvin here, but you cannot fault either of the drivers or even the top three, although Billy Fletcher quite a way down right now, down in that P3 position.
Yeah, but Billy did have a bit of a spin earlier on in the race, I think.
Yes, he did. That's a good point. You remind us of that. He did have that incident coming out of Westfield where he got the car sideways in the run down Dingle Dell, and as a result, I think it's the case. That's probably cost him the best part of, I'd say, 10 seconds, and those 10 seconds could have seen him right up there for the top.
It could have done. It'd have made a really nice battle between the three of them.
Well, as he makes his way down towards Hawthorns right now, we can see that Caruana, our track map, just making his way up towards Sheen Curve. So as a result, I think we're going to have to bring this one home with Caruana at the helm of it. So as he makes his way into Stirling's right now, he's come all the way from the back of the field and he's made his way through every single place. There's been drama, there's been incidents, and he's been clear of all of it. He lived up to what he said he would do, and as he comes through the final corner, it is going to be the Briton and Matt Caruana from Luxem 24 who takes the win in the feature race at Brands Hatch. In the end, beating Harry Melvin by 2.1 seconds. Melvin crosses the line in P2. A brilliant drive from Melvin. All the same, a fantastic drive from the new motorsport driver. And Billy Fletcher comes across the line in P3 for the pros and overall. Oystein Hereford in the end makes his way around in P4. A good drive from Oystein as he comes out of that final corner to cross the line. And then it will be Ben Faines who on his debut tonight brings home a P5 in the feature race. And behind him it will be, by looks of things, Kenny Heremans, who now comes across the line in P6. A good drive from Heremans despite every challenge he's faced here, and it's going to be Verschaft who comes across the line here in P7 for overall and the pros, with Pimbo just behind him, of course, in P8, and then we've got Ben Hicks in P9. But just take us through the amateurs coming across the line right now, because it's a special day for Addy.
It is. Matthew Eddy comes across in P10 to win the AM class. I think this is the first time he's won it this season so far.
I believe so, and then behind him it's going to be a case that this time he's able to get on the podium after that disastrous end in the feature race at Monza. It's Rasmussen who crosses the line in P11, P2 in the amateur class. And what about our P3 man?
Ian Backer, he's had a bit of a difficult season at times, but I think he's earned this, to be honest.
Definitely, as he crossed the line in P3 in the amateurs, P12 overall, to Sunik in P13 in the end, but the pro driver there in P10, Andrew Lovesey P11 in the pros, P14 overall, and Ollie Wayne has had a mistake on the very last corner. He's gone wide out of Clark Curve. He's going to cross the line in P15 though. He's going to survive to P4 in the amateur class, and that is everybody's race complete, and that's our top 15. It should be pointed out, our fifth place man in the amateur class was Mark Baker, who finished P16. Well, what are your thoughts on what was a very dramatic race, especially for yourself, Matt, but indeed for many of our drivers?
I know not to pick short tracks anymore. No, I must admit, when I first picked this track, starting at the beginning of the season, I thought we weren't going to get more than 20, 25 people. So I thought it's a small track, but with not a lot of drivers, it's fine. But to get 40 cars at Brands Hatch, it makes for really close racing, like I said in the promotional stuff, but it was a bit chaotic, and I think I've learnt my lesson a bit from it.
Well, it's always a case that lessons can be learned, that as all of our drivers now make their way gradually back into the pits to wrap things up, let's get ready for post-race interviews with our winners. So ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere, because I think both Matt and myself will be bringing the questions to our race winners in the classes, and you won't want to miss it. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, we are back and ready for our post-race interviews with our winners of the feature race. And we'll start off with none other than our winner in the Pro category. That's the number 79 car of Matt Carana once again. Hello, Matt, can you hear me?
Hello.
Matt, congratulations on making it 2 out of 2 tonight at Brands Hatch. A win in the sprint and the win in the feature. How do you feel about coming all the way through the field to take the win?
Well, that was probably the toughest race of the whole season, to be honest. At the start, it was mayhem, and I didn't really know where to go. And then I made my way up a bit, and there was a bit of an incident. I got lost some time, but then I just put in some good laps and had some clean air. And then the pit stops, I gained a bit of time on Harry, and then we had a fight to the end.
Well, brilliant battle between yourself and Harry. We'll come back to that in a second, but really first to talk about your pace. I mean, in the end, I believe it was the fastest lap from yourself, a 1:21.7, which is a lap we hadn't seen at all in the practice sessions. Just where are these laps coming from, Matt? Have you got NOS in the rear of the car or something along those lines? This is phenomenal stuff.
I was just focused, trying to catch up, not really worrying about anyone else, and just trying to put some good laps in and stay consistent.
And with regards to the strategy, so we saw that you pitted quite late on. Were you focusing on trying to give yourself as much clear as possible? Because you seemed to pick a very good time to pit. It was almost as if you came in at the time when the traffic was going to build up, and you came out right behind Melvin in the end, only 3 seconds off.
Yeah, I had lots of clean air, and I thought that it wouldn't be good to pit early here, as I'd probably come out in a big group because it's quite a small track. So I was just staying in the clean air pit quite near the end, and hopefully I didn't come out in any traffic, and it was quite spread out at the end. So I got lucky there.
And then coming on to the battle between yourself and Melvin, it did get quite hairy at some points, particularly with Melvin feeling that pressure from yourself going up into Druids, where he lost the rear but kept it together. Was the plan just to keep mounting the pressure and then find an opening, or was it trying to come through as quickly as possible?
Well, at the point I was on 22 incident points, so if I hit him, I would have got a penalty. So I was just trying to find the right moment to get him and try not to make contact with him. Otherwise, that would have been my race over.
I see. And handing over to my colleague in Matt Emmons, any thoughts from yourself, Matt, or any questions you want to ask?
Can I just ask you, how did you know that you would make that move around the outside of Melvin and make it stick and not get that contact to send you over? Because I know driving it and having a few people tell me, you lose so much downforce on that corner if you even have a slight lift.
I don't really know, to be honest. I was sort of praying that he didn't go deep or whatever, but I sort of knew if I just hold the throttle a little bit, try and keep it on the outside and not go on the grass, then I can make it stick, I guess.
Well, definitely an absolutely phenomenal move, and one of the moves of the season, I would argue. And now looking ahead, of course, with 2 wins today, this gives you a fantastic points haul and really means that you're mounting a growing challenge to your teammate Billy Fletcher in the championship. Can we see this challenge really materialise even more when we go to Canada in a week's time?
Yeah, I hope so. It's really fun battling Billy for a championship, and it's good to race with him. So hopefully there's more racing to come with me and him.
Oh, we definitely look forward to it. Now, what are your thoughts about the Charles Villeneuve circuit? A circuit that you enjoy or one to miss?
I think it's a difficult circuit, and I think the racing's it's a bit difficult to do overtakes there, but I think it'll be fun.
Can you compare it to Brands Hatch at all then?
I don't think so. I think Canada's got a lot of like tight corners, and it's a very slow track, and there's a lot of like high curves, so it's quite different, I think.
Well, we definitely look forward to seeing you take to the Canadian circuit in a week's time. But until then, congratulations, Matt, on the double win tonight. And, well, just enjoy it, savour it, and we'll see you in a week's time.
Thanks.
Definitely a very happy Matt Carana there, wouldn't you say, Matt?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think Billy might start feeling a bit of the pressure now, because I think the gap will be down to about 70 or 60 points now.
Oh, most definitely. That gap is coming down at a very rapid rate of knots. And I think that really the big question is, with 3 rounds remaining, is how close can he get that gap before the final round? Can he perhaps get the gap to parity by the time they go into that final round? Because Billy's always going to have that advantage, but how much can Carana cut into it?
Well, this is it. I mean, doing the quick maths in my head, I think even if Matt was to do the double over the next 2 rounds, I think it would still mean there'd be nearly equal points going into the double points finish at Spa.
Oh, most definitely. And we can, just on a slight side note, we can see in the YouTube chat from Lucy Emmons, Matt interviewing Matt and Matt. Indeed, we've got a lot of Matts in this series.
I know, yeah, we've got too many.
Well, going from one Matt to another Matt to a third Matt, let's bring in Matthew Addy now to see what his thoughts are with the win in the amateur class. Hello, Matthew. Can you hear us?
Hello, yes I can.
Matthew, congratulations on the win in the feature race for the amateur class. How does it feel to what we believe to take your first win in the series?
It feels great, to be honest. I didn't think it was going to be as competitive as I was last week at the test race, but yeah, it all came together.
So just taking a step back, obviously the sprint race, a bit of a middle performance, not the performance you would have wanted from the sprint race, but you turned it around in the feature. What was the mindset from yourself going into the feature? Were you looking to really take the win here, or was it just a case of play this one as it goes?
Play it as it goes, really. In the sprint race, I got taken out by someone else having an accident, to be honest. So I felt I could have done a bit better in that one. But yeah, the feature race, I was the red missed a bit, to be honest, and I was just going for it.
We definitely were going for it from the outset, we should say, with a very fast start. Just take us through the strategy that you employed in the feature race, because one of the biggest challenges when we just spoke to our winner in the Pro Class, Matt Caruana, was the fact that it was finding that clear air to race with and the lap time as a result. What was your approach to this one?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a quite a small track, to be honest, for that amount of cars, and finding space on the track was really difficult. I think I could have qualified a lot better if I had found the space, but yeah, it was difficult to race. A lot of back markers in the way, and they're reluctant to get out of the way, to be honest.
Then, with regards to sort of looking at those moves past, say, back markers or other drivers, and then coming on to your pace yourself, very close pace and very closely matched with the likes of Rasmussen throughout the race, although Rasmussen in the end having a couple of offs in the end. Was it the case with yourself, you felt as though there was pressure not to make a mistake, or were you driving at that sort of comfortable pace in the end?
For 3/4 of the race, to be honest, it was a comfortable pace. At the end, it started to get a bit twitchy after my pit stop. I had one accident, just dropped a wheel on the grass, to be honest, but luckily got away with it and recovered really quickly.
And then handing over to my colleague in the interview box, to Matt Emmons, I should say. Any thoughts from yourself, Matt, or any questions you'd like to ask?
Not really, to be honest. I know I'd have talked to Matt quite a bit, so yeah. I just want to say first, congratulations on your first win in the series.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I wish I wish I could have done a bit better from the outset, to be honest. I might have been up the table a bit more. Well,
is it not down to the new Ferrari coming out that's helped you out a lot?
No, to be honest, I don't feel that that's been an advantage. If anything, I didn't really have much practice in the new one, but whether they bop it or not, I don't know, to be honest. But I'm happy with how it is at the moment.
Yeah, I don't think they will come until after this season anyway.
No, exactly, no.
And then looking forward really to the round ahead, so 3 rounds to go, round 10 next at the Canadian circuit of Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. How are you feeling for the circuit with the legendary Wall of Champions?
To be honest, I've driven that circuit a lot on simulators, not on iRacing, so it's going to be a bit of a learning curve, but at least I know the track layout, so it's going to be good. Yeah, I really enjoy the track there.
Well, we look forward to seeing a possible strong pair of results from you there. But until then, congratulations on your inaugural win once again. Enjoy it, savour it, and we look forward to seeing you out on the circuit in a week's time.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys.
Well, hearing from Addy there, very happy with the finish. But I think a little bit of a bittersweetness with regards to his performances over the season so far, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would as well. I feel a bit cheeky for asking that question now. But no, he's not. Again, he's not had the best of luck, and tonight I think he's just gone really well, and I hope it gives him the push to be able to fight the likes of George Bland and Betak and Ollie Wayne.
Oh, definitely. And I think the championship for the AMs in particular is really going to open up now with so many varied results over the 2 races tonight. I think anybody could be in the contention really for that P4 finish outside of the podium, because going into it was very close, and we've had a lot of upsets tonight at Brands Hatch.
Yeah, we have. I think I can take myself out of the contention for 4th place after tonight with not scoring any points. But yeah, I must admit, I never thought the AMs would be this close, and I never thought at the beginning of the season I'd have a championship this close. So it's made me feel a bit happy, and I'd like to take this moment to thank everybody that's been a part of this championship, even if they've been in for one round. This championship wouldn't have been as good and as popular as it has been without them. So thank you.
Oh, that's great to hear. And I think all the guys do appreciate you leading the organisation and the administration for it. And I should point out, ladies and gentlemen, that Matt Evans, who is joining me in the box right now, is not only a co-commentator in the making, but also is one of the drivers in the series and our senior organiser. He's the brains behind the operation here with regards to the GT3 Championship. And again, I would stress, if you are tuning in right now and thinking, how can I get involved in this championship and take part, Matt Evans is the guy you need to speak to.
Yes, and you can contact me on Discord or Facebook.
But with that, we should now wrap up with the proceedings. So thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community and our series, why not check us out at the Next Gen Racing website, that's nextgenracing.co.uk, or our official Facebook group, that's facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. Also want to say a big thank you to our partners without whom this would not be possible, that's Apex Racing Academy and Next Level Racing. And next time we head to the Canadian circuit, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, Wednesday, the 29th of September 2021. Put it in the diary, folks. You will not want to miss it, because I am sure that War Champions is going to see a lot more visitors. I'm not talking about tourists with cameras. I'm talking about pieces of car machinery tapping that wall. And as we take a look at the featured lap here, as brought to you by one known driver who's sitting with me right now, Matt Evans, in the BMW Z4 of all cars. We will, of course, be bringing you another onboard lap from one of our other drivers next week as well. It's the case that this circuit, a very challenging one, and it's seen as one of those natural circuits which also blends in a way into a little bit of a hybrid circuit with some of its tighter sections and its long run straights, particularly the first sectors being more about the handling and the latter sectors being more about brake force and the long run down towards the chicane into the War Champions. What would you say, Matt, if you had to sum this circuit up in a single sentence? And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, you won't want to go anywhere. You will not want to miss it next week. Put it in the diary and we will see you then. But until then, it's goodbye from me. I have been Paul TX1 from Walsh, also known as Britain of Spit. And it's goodbye from my colleague. And we have been Next Gen Racing. Until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.